Great afternoon to all. We'll get the Education and Economic Development Subcommittee of Appropriations called to order. We're going to jump out of order just a tad bit for this afternoon. We're going to start up with Morgan State University first, and we'll have the analysis by Kelly Norton.
Thank you. We're going to start on page 4 with Exhibit 1. It shows the total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2019 to 2024. Total undergraduate enrollment increased by 727 students from fall 2023 to 2024. As is illustrated in the exhibit, first-time full-time students experienced a second consecutive increase, growing 4.2% in fall 2024. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As shown in the exhibit, the number of applications grew in fiscal 2024, totaling over 23,366. The yield rate of 12.4%, which is the number of students who actually enrolled from that total, was the second lowest rate recorded from fiscal 2015 through 2024. The acceptance rate of 82%, the green line, was also the 4th highest rate recorded over this time. Exhibit 3 on page 6 provides a breakdown of enrollment trends by location, continuing to reverse the trend of declining enrollment. In-state enrollment grew by 349 students in 2024. The international undergraduate student population has fallen from the 2017 high mark of 780 students to 166 in 2024, but has experienced 2 consecutive years of increases. The out-of-state student population continues to increase, growing by 373 students in 2024. Out-of-state students now make up 41% of undergraduate enrollment at the university. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the second-year retention rates for first-time full-time students. The second-year retention rate had fallen in 2017 and 2018, but rebounded in 2019, totaling 73.5%. Since that cohort, there has been a decline of second-year retention rates. The second-year retention rate dropped to 65.6% for the 2022 cohorts. This decline is not surprising due to these cohorts overlapping with the pandemic. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 4-year graduation rate has decreased for the second consecutive cohort, falling to 17.8% for the 2019 cohort. The 6-year graduation rate decreased to 41.7% for the 2017 cohort. The president should comment on the declining graduation rates and how the institution is supporting students to reverse this current trend. Exhibit 6 on page 9 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Both non-Pell and Pell recipient full-time transfer students had the highest graduation rates with 71% and 57% respectively. Pell first-time full-time students had the lowest graduation rates at 43%. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2021 through 2023. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $25,130. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded averaged $15,218. In fiscal 2023, the average net price was $10,205 less than the cost of attendance. What this exhibit also shows is that the cost of attendance will vary depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2023, it cost a student $10,666 with a family income of under $30,000, but $16,768 for a student with a family income of over $110,000. Exhibit 8 on page 11 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid and award has increased $19.5 million between fiscal 2019 to fiscal 2024. Need-based aid totaled $26.6 million alone in fiscal 2024. The U.S. Department of Education reports the median debt for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 9 on page 12 illustrates that the median debt of students range from just under $21,000 for civil engineering majors to just over $31,000 for social work majors. Electrical engineering majors had the highest median earnings at just over $104,000. Moving to the budget, the fiscal 2025 budget funding included $3 million for the Center of Urban and Coastal Climate Science Research, which was reduced to $2 million through the BPW cost containment measures. The president should provide an update on the use of the funds received for the center after the reduction. The fiscal 2025 budget included $500,000 for the Center for Equitable Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Systems. The president should provide an update on the use of those funds. Exhibit 10 on page 14 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2024 to 2025. The largest dollar change was in research, which increased by $8.1 million, and spending on instruction also increased, growing by $4.5 million. The proposed fiscal 2026 budget found in Exhibit 11 on page 15 includes $11 million in salary enhancements and $27.6 million in HBCU settlement funds. In total, Morgan's total state fund allocation decreases by $7.7 million or 4% relative to the adjusted fiscal 2025 working appropriation when excluding the fiscal 2025 salary increases. The President should comment on how Morgan will address the decrease in state support for fiscal 2026. Exhibit 12 on page 16 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. In fiscal 2026, state funds accounted for 42% of unrestricted funds. Morgan anticipates total unrestricted funds to grow substantially, increasing to $401.3 million in the 2026 allowance. The personnel data for the university is found on page 17. Morgan has noted that the contractual full-time equivalents has not declined to 333. For fiscal 2025, it remains at the fiscal 2024 level of 727, and DBM concurs that the budget books contain errors for the fiscal 2025 and 2026 personnel data. As of December 31st, 2024, the university has 108 positions vacant above the expected turnover. The President should detail the progress being made to fill the vacant positions. Moving to issues, which begins on page 18. The first issue covers the Maryland College of Osteopathic Medicine, or MDCOM, at Morgan. Morgan agreed to allow the private entity Salute Education LLC to operate the private for-profit medical school on its campus. MHEC approved MDCOM to operate in Maryland, and its first students were expected in late 2024. Last session, Morgan had explored state funding and indicated the deal with Salute had fallen through. It seems as though Salute has secured the necessary funding to move forward and is expecting to submit an application for candidacy with the Commission on Osteopathic College Accreditation in the near future. The President should provide an update on the status of MDCOM and the expected timeline for its first class. The second issue begins on the bottom of page 18 and covers outstanding mandated reports. Each year, the legislature mandates reports and studies to be completed by state agencies or other governmental entities. Anything submitted to or received by the Maryland General Assembly or DLS is deemed a mandated report. Morgan has 4 outstanding mandated reports. Number 1, sources of amounts of payments used to support auxiliary facilities and academic facilities report. 2, the report on credit for prior learning. 3, a summary of the transfers among programs for fiscal year 2024, and the fiscal 2024 position accountability report. The institution also has 2 pieces of committee narrative related to student cohort data and East North Avenue development that has not been officially submitted. The President should comment on when these reports will be submitted and how the institution will ensure that reports are submitted in a timely fashion. The DLS operating budget recommended actions are found on pages 20 through 21, and they are again to restrict funds pending the outstanding East North Avenue development report, and to restrict funds pending a letter from the Office of Legislative Audits stating the institution has corrected repeat findings. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Norton. Appreciate your analysis. Any question for the analysis? The analyst, right? Not the analysis, but the analyst. All righty. We'll call up President Wilson and your team. Great seeing you on this day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. First of all, good afternoon. I'm David Wilson, president of Morgan State University, and I have with me to my left David Lachina, who is our executive vice president for budget and administration at the university. Vice Chair Harris and members of the Education and Economic Subcommittee, we first want to thank Governor Moore and, of course, this committee, the Maryland House of Delegates, the Senate, the entire General Assembly, for the investments being made in Morgan State University. Those investments are based on almost every metric that is included in the State Higher Education Plan and the State Economic Development Plan are returning significant dividends to the state of Maryland. I just want to make a few comments, and then we'll get directly to addressing the questions that the analyst has put before us. And thank you very much to Kelly Norton for, once again, an extraordinary job of capturing what's going on at the university. Morgan State University is in an unparalleled era of transformation, research, innovation, faculty, and student ascendancy. With regard to our enrollment, we are at capacity. We are the fastest growing university in the state of Maryland, and indeed, percentage-wise, one of the fastest growing in the United States. There have been stories written on us as to what is going on in Morgan, that you are bucking the national trend in terms of the enrollment cliff that has been projected to actually start occurring a few years back. So we have 11,000 students at Morgan. Those students are coming from 46 states and 70 countries, though still about 56% of our students are from the state of Maryland, every county represented. With regard to the diversity across the campus, about 68% of our students identify as African American, but 32% you can check every box. So Morgan also is one of the most diverse campuses in the state of Maryland as well. There are about 30 disciplines at Morgan where we are #1 in the state of Maryland in producing African American graduates, and several disciplines where we are #1 in the United States in producing those graduates. Disciplines like electrical engineering, civil engineering, industrial engineering, finance, and almost in all of the sciences. And so this is an unparalleled period of growth in terms of student enrollment. We are in a period of rapid rise with regard to our research mission. And so when I arrived at Morgan, Morgan had been classified by Carnegie as a moderate research institution, or an R3, and we set sights on becoming, at the time, what would be the third university in the state of Maryland to reach R1 status, of very high research. We have achieved R2 status, which is high research. We're the only R2 high research university in our state, and only 3 that are above us who are R1s, and that's College Park, Johns Hopkins, and UMBC. We are on track to join them in December of 2027, becoming the 4th very high research institution in the state of Maryland, and the 3rd public one. Our faculty also are writing grants and being very successful in winning them. When I arrived at Morgan, we were bringing in roughly about $18 to $20 million a year in federal grants. As I sit here today, last night, halfway through the fiscal year, we had $99 million. And those grants are being used by faculty to produce cutting-edge research. And an example of that is in the new discoveries that are coming out of Morgan. So last year, the United States Trade and Patent Office released a list of the top 100 universities in the United States in terms of patents produced. And Morgan State University came in at number 98 in the United States with 13 patents in that year. Just to kind of put it in perspective, those 13 patents were produced with $29 million of research expenditures. Right above us, at about 95 or so, is a university that had $500 million in research expenditures, but only 16 patents. And so Morgan is punching well above its weight in terms of bringing in the research grants, producing original ideas, and then having so many of those ideas to spin off into startups. Also, with regard to our students at Morgan, undergraduates and graduates, but the students have taste, if you will, the magic of winning. We say to them, when you walk across the stage here at Morgan and you get your sheepskin, you must, without qualification, and we are unapologetic about it, be prepared to dance on the world stage with anyone, anytime, any place, anywhere. And they have heeded that call. And so they enter national competitions all over the country. They are winning. They are being selected for national prizes, national fellows. And so we're very, very proud of them. Equally, our faculty are now being inducted into the national academies. We are quite competitive in attracting faculty members who are fellows of national societies. And so that's an example of the innovation, the attractiveness of the institution that is basically providing these opportunities for students and faculty to also win. And so I just want to conclude by saying that none of that would be possible without an investment in an institution that is a high research institution, that is the only comprehensive public research institution in Maryland's largest city, Baltimore. And so we really, because of that alone, have no peer higher ed institution in this state, because we are the only public, comprehensive research institution in the state's largest city. And so we like to say that Morgan must be to Baltimore City what institutions like Georgia State is to Atlanta, what Wayne State is to Detroit, what Temple University is to Philadelphia, or what the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee is to Milwaukee City. So you name another city in the U.S. the size of Baltimore, and it has a public, very high research institution in the core parameters of the city. And that is where we are headed, and we are on track to get there in 2.5 years. And so with that said, being cognizant of the time, we want to shift then to responding to the comments that the analyst has asked us to. With regard to the first comment 1, page 7, the president should comment on the declining graduation rates and how the institution is supporting students to reverse this trend. Here we had basically increased the graduation rates at Morgan by 70 to 80%. And then came COVID, and it took a slight dip. We were well on our way to 50%, and then it fell by a point or two because of COVID. So that is really the reason, and now those students are 3 years in, and you're seeing the impact of that. But we already put in place additional measures in order to get that back on track, and you'll see that move up significantly in the next year or two. Likewise, this is the 14th straight year where our retention rate at Morgan has been above 70%. We have won 6 national awards for that, and the discrepancy here is simply in how the data are supported, are reported, I should say. So the MHEC data is reported based on security numbers of students. But we actually capture our data based on the student ID. And so that is the discrepancy there, because we have some students without a security number and therefore not counted in the official data that MHEC may get from us. With regard to comment number 2, the president should provide an update on the use of funds received for the Urban and Coastal Science Research Center. Those funds are being used to secure space for the center. We have searches underway now to hire the faculty for the center. We held off for a year simply because it was mid-year correction where the dollars that had been allocated for the center, we had to give back a third of those. And so we didn't know what the status of that would be going forward and could not move forward to hire permanent tenure track faculty. But we, as I said, are using those funds to secure space for the center because we are landlocked and space tight, and also to purchase instrumentation. Next, likewise, the $500,000 for the Center for Equitable AI Machine Learning, by the way, which is one of the few centers of its kind in the nation. And I will be headed to New York City this afternoon to participate tomorrow in a full-day immersion experience where 20 presidents across the United States have been invited by Jeffrey Selingo and the New York Times to basically assemble at the Google lab there to really begin to open the door to us as to how we need to be thinking about AI to enhance our operations, to enhance the quality of learning on the campus. And our center also has been invited to be a part of all of these kinds of things going on across the nation, because our goal is to make sure that the algorithms are free of bias and not replicating that. And that's what makes this center so unique. Comment number 4, page 15. The president should comment on how Morgan will address the decrease in state support. This is going to be tough for us. I do not want to mislead you, if you will, but we're putting in place a comprehensive process that will enable us to carve out the $12 million that we'll have to carve out of our budget this year because of the cuts. And our goal is always to be transparent and to be strategic and to make those cuts in a way that will not in any way impair the momentum that is unfolding at what we call our national treasure. The president should comment on the discrepancy on how the institution will work with DBM. We are working with DBM and DLS in order to make sure that the data provided are consistent, and certainly you have our commitment to move forward and make that happen. The president should detail the progress being made to fill the vacant positions. I'm going to ask Mr. Lucina if he would give us a brief update on that.
Yes, yeah. So the
Put it closer.
sorry. So the vacancy list, essentially, we have 130 of our vacancies that are actually active. Of the remaining around 98 or so that are on the list are really cyclical based, so faculty hires in a certain period, as well as some specialized skill sets that have proven difficult to hire, just based on availability of skill sets and frankly the budget values that we're able and willing to pay for those positions. So we are very focused and concentrated on our vacancy list. That will be a subject of deep review as part of our budgetary cuts to go in and look at and ensure that positions that we have are continued to be necessary and valid. So we'll very close attention on that going forward.
And as we bring this to a close, comment 8, page 19, the president should comment on when these reports will be submitted and how the institution will ensure that the reports are submitted in a timely fashion. I have to say publicly that I do take responsibility for this because I was submitting the reports finally as our colleagues would actually put them together. And in a couple of occasions, I thought I had submitted them, but they went to the wrong address. I had one letter in the email address that should not have been there. But then we had a couple more that we had not submitted timely. And once again, you have our commitment that that is corrected, and actually those reports are coming in if they have not come in already. And so with the recommendations, recommendation 1 provided that $250,000 of our appropriation be withheld until a plan is development for the development of East North Avenue. We respectfully do not concur with that recommendation. And the reason is succinct. 2 years ago, Morgan was able to acquire 59 acres of property that is about a mile from our campus. And in acquiring that property from the city of Baltimore, we vowed that we would take about 2 years or so and put together a comprehensive community development plan that was stretched from North Avenue in Baltimore all the way past the Morgan campus, past our School of Engineering, and it was going to be very, very comprehensive of taking in Lake Clifton and that whole area. This particular area would be a part of that. And so we are saying it's going to take us a little while to do this right, because it will involve a lot of community input, and we're close to identifying the consultant who will help us. So we are going to actually develop this plan, but this plan is going to be a part of the overall redevelopment of that entire area. And that's why we are asking for that $250,000 not to be withheld. And then finally, you indicated that because of repeat audits, I think we had 4 repeats, that you were recommending $250,000 to be withheld until those have been addressed. I can report to you that all those findings have been addressed and closed out. And so from our perspective, there is no open repeat audit finding at Morgan State University. So, Mr. Vice Chair Harris, those are my comments.
Well, we thank you so much, President Wilson, for your comments. Appreciate your response to the DLS recommendations and their questions. Any questions from the committee? Delegate Forbes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Wilson, for being here. And I've had the privilege of being on your campus a few times in the last 6 months, and you're firing on all cylinders. And congratulations on your highest class that you've attracted this year again. You beat your last year record. In looking at the analysis, you are attracting way more women to your school than men. And I don't know what the graduation rate you're seeing between those two groups, but are you doing anything to support the men that come to your campus to ensure that they're successful and continue on and to their degree?
Yes, and so we've been discussing this now for about 4 or 5 years at Morgan. We have gone from, in terms of gender representation on campus, to a place where we had about 55% of our students as female and 45% male, to now about 62% of our students as female and 38% as male. That decrease in male enrollment has been very precipitous with regard to black males. And so we've been discussing it, as I said, for a few years. And so finally, a month ago, I impaneled a presidential commission on black male enrollment because the national report came out and it said, there's really something going on in this space for all males, and it is even more acute for black males. It indicated that with regard to what you see across higher ed, there had been, I believe, a decrease of, I want to say maybe 5% or so amongst male student enrollment, but it had almost doubled that with regard to HBCUs. And so none of the institutions had paused to say, what is going on? What is happening in K through 12? What is happening in the community? What is really happening, so we can make sure that that males are understanding that the surest path to the middle class in particular, especially if they want to class hop, is a high-quality credential beyond high school, and the baccalaureate degree is still at the top of that. And so I went to a lecture by the author of Men and Boys. I was really intrigued by that book. and I'm inviting him to the campus to kind of talk about this. I have to say, Dr. Farr, it's almost sad that I serve on the board of the Lumina Foundation, and we look at these data across the U.S. And about a month and a half from unveiling to the nation what the next completion goal would be for the nation. And so Lumina gave the nation the 60 by 25 goal in 2008, and we will be revealing what we think the next completion goal would be by 2040 in a month or so. And so what is happening here is that, and now I'm not speaking for Lumina, I'm speaking for just looking at the data. It seems that quite a few males, and quite a few white males, have kind of bought what I will call, they bought into the big lie. And the big lie is that you really don't want to go to college because that place is going to make you something that you don't want to be. And we've seen a precipitous drop just in the last 8 years with regard to white males going to college, and then it has been a little bit more acute with regard to black males. So we have to get in there and kind of understand what's going on and make sure that our young people are getting the right message, that, look, if you really want to class hop and have an opportunity for economic prosperity, by and large, the baccalaureate degree must also be in front of you.
Thank you for all of your thoughts on that issue. And like so many of the problems we face, there are a lot of factors that go into it. When you have the author of Men and Boys on your campus, I would love to come and hear it, because we're seeing it in a lot of our higher ed. And I agree with you. It's something we should look at and make sure that people understand. I think that the high cost of college people talk about and have heard, don't want to get in debt, don't want to be in debt, but there's still such value in higher ed, and so I appreciate you looking at it. And
We certainly will issue an invitation to you. And that author is Richard Rees, so we will issue that invitation.
Absolutely appreciate that. Actually, I want to dive deeper there, because that the other piece of that is, we did a bill last year. I think it was last year that we did the bill to do more recruitment and getting out to the schools, getting out to the high schools, getting out to the middle schools, especially in the disadvantaged and low-income areas, to ensure that we are presenting the idea, presenting the thought of colleges. And so how well is Morgan doing that piece? Because I think that is important as well. People don't know what they don't know. And I always tell folks, even when I was going to high school, when I was growing up in New Jersey, I never saw not one college, and I went to an all-boys preparatory school, right? So I haven't seen not one college camp come to the school when I was there. Mm-hmm. And so what are we doing to actually reach out to those areas? Because once again, some kids, they don't know what they don't know.
So I looked at the list of agencies that will be presented, and so you will hear from K through 12 right after us, and so it's kind of interesting to connect these two, because that's very important. If you were to come to the Morgan campus during the summer, you could mistake it for perhaps a middle or high school, because you literally see thousands of students on the campus who are coming to participate in summer enrichment programs, right? So, and then we get funding to make that happen from foundations and corporations and even some federal grants, and so that has been going on for a while. We have a center, a national center at Morgan called National Center for the Elimination of Educational Disparities, and that has gotten off the ground about 2 years. And they put something in front of me that I was not aware of, and it is that very, very few, only about 2 colleges or so in our state actually offer tours to elementary schools. And I could not understand that. So they actually hired someone, and he is just absolutely in his element. And even, this week, you go to the campus and you'll see fourth graders, fifth graders in mass coming, and they are being exposed to this place called college very early on in elementary school. And so we had not done that. We typically would start at like 7th grade, but nothing below. And so this is really taken off like wildfire, and I'm very supportive of its growth and continuation. But you're right, Vice Chair Harris, we have to think very innovatively, very creatively about this, and get to our young people as early as possible.
I definitely appreciate you. Definitely appreciate that. The good thing is I actually also have 2 staff members that are currently go to Morgan, and they do an extremely great job in my office. So I do appreciate all that you all are already doing with the current students at Morgan. So we definitely appreciate that. Any other questions from the committee? No other questions. So that concludes our budget hearing for Morgan State University. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. All right, we're going to transition to MSDE funding for educational organizations. And then we're going to have our analysis from Laura Hyde.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary. In fiscal 2026, the budget for funding for educational organizations decreases by $4.6 million, or 7.7%, to $55.8 million. Exhibits 1 and 2 on pages 3 through 5 have managing for results measures for the Maryland School for the Blind and the Blind Industries and Services of Maryland. Turning to page 7, Exhibit 3, the Non-Public School Health and Security Program. In fiscal 2024, the program expended $2 million on eligible expenditures and canceled the remaining funds to the Cigarette Restitution Fund and the Aid to Non-Public Schools Program. In fiscal 2025, MSD reported that approximately $800,000 in awards have been obligated, and the bold language on the top of page 8, DLS recommended that $1.7 million from this program be reduced. DLS notes that MSD has since clarified that all $2.5 million in fiscal 2025 funds have been awarded. However, considering the fiscal outlook of the state and the relatively new implementation of this program, DLS recommends deleting the $2.5 million special fund allowance for this program in fiscal 2026, with savings from the reductions recycled to support Medicaid costs. Exhibits 4, 5, 6, and 7 on pages 8 through 11 show the fiscal 2026 allowance and changes from fiscal 2025 to 2026. General funds totaling $38.2 million for Maryland School for the Blind and state-aided institutions account for almost 70% of this allowance, with special funds totaling $17.5 million, or approximately 30% of the allowance. The decrease of $4.6 million from fiscal 2025 to 2026 is an offset between $1 million net increase for funds for Maryland School for the Blind and a decrease of $5.6 million for SAIs. Turning to page 12, Exhibit 8 shows Maryland School for the Blind's enrollment for formula funding, which is estimated to be at 369 students for fiscal 2026. Turning to the bold language at the top of page 13, Maryland School for the Blind receives an annual state allocation based on a formula that uses the per pupil amount in the state share of the foundation program. The BRFA of 2025 includes a provision that would reduce the foundation program per pupil amount by $163 in fiscal 2026 from $9,226 to $9,063. Although the fiscal 2026 budget includes a reduction to apply the lower per pupil amount for local education agencies contingent on the passage of Senate Bill 429 and House Bill 504, which is called the Maryland Excellence for Public School Education Act, Maryland School for the Blind's fiscal 2026 allowance is based on the full per pupil amount. Therefore, DLS recommends adding language that reduces Maryland School for the Blind's budget by approximately $400,000 to align with the fiscal 2026 foundation per pupil amount, contingent on the enactment of this bill. On the next page, Exhibit 9 shows MSB's revenues and expenditures. For fiscal 2026, MSB's total revenues are estimated at $45.5 million, and expenses are estimated at $44.2 million, excluding depreciation, which leaves MSB with an estimated cash balance of $21.7 million at the end of 2026. Exhibit 10 on page 15 shows MSB's expenditures by category. On pages 16 and 17, Exhibit 11 has state-aided institution allocations, which shows the change in amounts by program and the decrease of $5.6 million from fiscal 2025 to 2026. Turning to the issue section on page 18 for the Boost program, the governor's fiscal 2026 budget, as introduced, details the criteria for non-public schools that have students who are eligible for a Boost scholarship and would like to participate. On the next page, Exhibit 12 shows that the fiscal 2025 appropriation for Boost is $9 million, with $8.5 million in awards and a balance of approximately $700,000. Exhibit 13 on page 20 shows the breakout of student awards by category. Exhibits 14 and 15 on pages 20 through 22 show Boost student proficiency by test and subject area, which indicates that in school year 2023-2024, Boost students scored 2 percentage points lower on standardized testing than non-Boost students. At the bottom of page 22, the DLS recommendation in bold language is that the language from the fiscal 2025 budget bill be restored and asks MSD to comment on special education awards, the status of declined awards, and efforts of Boost schools to close the gap between Boost and non-Boost students on standardized tests. DLS recommended actions start on page 23. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you for your analysis, Ms. Hyde. Any questions? Delegate Grace.
One question is about Boost, and it was comparing the Boost students to, I guess, the regular public school students. I think generally people who will apply for the Boost scholarship are going to be those students that are going probably to the most challenging schools that are in the state. So they're probably coming from like a low performing school anyway to begin with. So do you think that it's sort of a fair comparison to, or not? Or we're just saying that this is what the numbers really truly are?
I think we're just saying that this is what the tests that the data that we collect, that's what.
Right. Okay, and we don't have any data. Maybe I can ask the department. Actually, they'll have a better idea what the answer is. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any other questions for that? Appreciate that. We'll bring up our superintendent, right, and her team. Appreciate you. Thank you for your patience.
Happy to be here. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Harris and members of the committee. I'm Carrie Wright, State Superintendent of Schools. With me today is Krishna Chalur, Deputy State Superintendent for Operations and Finance, and Donna Gunning, who is Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Finance. And I want to thank you for your hard work, and once again, thank Laura, who's our analyst, who's always been so faithful and working with us in a very collaborative manner. There are representatives here from the Maryland School for the Blind, and they will present their response to your analysis separately. The Broadening Options and Opportunities for Students Today, or BOOST, scholarship program provides scholarship awards for sub-students who are eligible for the free or reduced price school meals program to attend a participating non-public school. The application for the 25-26 school year will open in March 2025, and MSDE will conduct information sessions for non-public schools, families, and applicants. The Non-Public Schools Textbook and Technology Program is a special fiscal program that provides resources for textbook and technology purchases for eligible non-public schools and child care programs. Funding allocations are determined using the proportion of student enrollment who qualify for free and reduced meals. Eligible non-public schools are schools that meet those criteria. MSTE has diligently worked to streamline this process as well as to improve customer service. Based on awards allocated to date, the Department of Legislative Services, or DLS, recommends reducing $1.7 million in special funds for this program in fiscal '25. The department wants to bring to your attention that all of the health and safety funds have been obligated, and therefore there is no balance available. DLS recommended also that the language from the fiscal '25 budget bill be restored regarding awards for special education students and a report on the BOOST program. They ask us to also comment on the following: BOOST Special Ed. The BOOST program offered a special education award equal to a student's base award for every qualifying student. Some special education students did not receive this full special education award because the non-public school provided a financial package that reduced the BOOST scholarship. In an attempt to meet the $700,000 directive, the BOOST board decided in November to award all special education students an additional $250 per student. 15% of special education BOOST students could not receive the additional $250 award because their tuition was already 100% covered. Next topic, BOOST award declines. BOOST students did decline the award. There were a total of 452 students who declined the award. 89 were renewals and 363 were new applicants. You also ask us to to comment on the following: BOOST schools closing the achievement gap between BOOST and non-BOOST students. BOOST schools are not required to report on how they are closing the gap in BOOST students versus non-BOOST student performance. So as such, MSTE did not collect this data. Analysis eliminated the cigarette restitution fund special fund appropriation for the non-public school health and security program. The savings can be recycled to fund Medicaid, reducing general fund spending on that program, and MSTE certainly supports the governor's budget. MSTE concurs with the DLS recommendation on the language to submit a report related to the BOOST programs. This concludes my testimony, and we are prepared to answer your questions.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Any questions from the committee? Delegate Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you again for your presentation. So just as a follow-up, I guess, with comparing our, BOOST students with our public school students, obviously, most of our, they come from a socioeconomic background that where it's a big challenge. That's the reason why they're getting these scholarships anyway, to get out of some of these schools, to go hopefully to a school at least where they and their families, see it as a better place. And then you did answer one of my questions in regards to I think it would be a better comparison comparing those students with the non-BOOST students in the private schools, but you don't have that data. So do you think it's really a fair comparison to compare the performance of these students to the rest of the public school students across the state? Because we don't really have any BOOST students that are coming from the higher socioeconomic piece, where the public school students do, because they don't qualify because of economics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so in the assessment data that's in the analysis, that data is comparing BOOST students with non-BOOST students in that school. It's not comparing them against other public school students.
So now I'm really confused because I thought you said that you didn't have the data.
So we don't collect any information on what individual schools are doing to close the achievement gap between their BOOST and non-BOOST students. That's the data we don't collect. But the assessment data is the results of BOOST students and non-BOOST students in the same school.
Okay. And as a follow-up question, it has to do with funding. So are we still on track to basically end the program through attrition? Are we still going to be, do we have enough funding to be able to continue to do that once those family members, end up graduating?
Yeah, I believe we do, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. Any other questions from the committee? Awesome. That concludes your portion, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Thanks so
We
much.
do have a couple of witnesses, though, for this round here. So please bear with me on the names. If I mispronounce your name, please let us know what it is once you get up here. But we got a Sarah Micah. I know I might have messed that up. Just Mickey. And then we also have Santa Diaz. We also have I'm gonna spell this out because I'm gonna jack this one up. Tadesse, last name Habte. Awesome. You just pronounce it once you get up here. And a Carla. All right, we'll go with those for now. And we just go straight down the line. Appreciate you.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the subcommittee. I'm Sarah Mirsky-Mickey. I'm the Deputy Director of the Baltimore Jewish Council, which represents the Associated Jewish Community Federation of Baltimore, all its agencies, as well as the greater organized Jewish community of Greater Baltimore. As you can see from my written testimony, I'm here in support of the governor's budget as proposed of the boost funding, non-public textbooks and technology funding, and the health and security grant funding. I'm here just to discuss the FY26 analysis to suggest the cut of the program entirely for the health and security grant funding of the $2.5 million. The analysis said it's due to our current fiscal outlook and because the program is newer. However, cutting funding for healthcare during a post-COVID world, seeing more and more children with dangerous viruses and infections, or cutting security dollars for many schools, which are Jewish in this budget, at the time of increased need, are not the type of budget cuts what our state should be making. Therefore, we ask for a favorable report on the budget as introduced by the governor on these three matters and reject the cut. Thank you. Don't touch.
Buenas tardes. Gracias por la oportunidad de estar aquí. Vengo a contar mi testimonio y mi testimonio es que tengo una de mis hijas que es mayor de edad con espina bífida.
Good afternoon. I am here to give my testimony. I have with me my daughter who has spina bifida and is a Boost Scholarship recipient.
Ella usa silla de ruedas y ella fue la primera en la familia que recibió la bendición de recibir el Boost. Y eso fue un sueño hecho realidad para ella porque ella de verdad deseaba mucho ir a una escuela privada.
My daughter who has spina bifida uses a wheelchair, and it was her dream to attend a private school using Boost funding.
Porque en la escuela anterior ella no tenía amigos y ella quería probar una escuela privada porque había escuchado que era más familiar y con pocos estudiantes y que todos se conocen unos con otros.
In her previous school, she did not have any friends, and so she lacked that community feeling. And she had heard from other students from Boost schools that they really had a community that supported students.
Pero nosotros no podíamos pagar una escuela privada porque solo mi esposo trabaja y porque ella necesita cirugías y hospitalizaciones muy seguido. Y con la beca de Boost, esto fue una gran bendición para nuestra familia.
Financially, it was difficult for our daughter to attend a private school as my husband is the only one who works. We also have to cover medical expenses for our daughter who has spina bifida, but the Boost Scholarship was able to make this a reality.
Para ella fue una gran bendición para ella poder asistir a San Andrew Apóstol y ya luego, gracias a Boost, también mis otros niños pudieron ir, que estaban muy deseosos de poder ir.
It was a great blessing when we were accepted into St. Andrew of Apostle, and now my other three children are also attending the school and are also Boost Scholarship recipients.
Entonces, estoy muy agradecida por esta oportunidad. Esta comunidad en esta escuela es muy maravillosa porque ellos nos conocen a nuestra familia y conocen a cada uno de nuestros niños y no solamente intelectualmente, sino en los momentos difíciles ellos nos apoyan.
We are very grateful for this opportunity to receive boost funding. The school really knows my children not only intellectually, but they also know them individually as students, and we feel supported in our family.
Y nos ayudan mucho, especialmente con las dificultades que cuando nuestra hija mayor está en cirugías o en el hospital, nuestros hijos están muy agradecidos de tener el bus porque esta comunidad se ha convertido en una segunda familia para ellos.
We are also very grateful to Boost and to the school because this community has allowed for our children to have community support while our oldest daughter is having surgery.
Boost nos dio la esperanza de poder enviar a nuestros hijos a una escuela privada, ya que por la falta de dinero nosotros nunca hubiéramos podido enviarlos. Y algunas personas vale la pena darles esa oportunidad y veo que funciona.
Boost was able to make our children attending private schools a reality. We understand that this is a great blessing and encourage for the Boost funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todas las autoridades y agradezco la oportunidad de dejar expresar mi testimonio con el beneficio que mi hija ha tenido con la beca BUS.
Good afternoon, delegates. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I here express support of this Boost funding and how it has impacted my daughter.
Mi hija es la primera en la familia que ha tenido la oportunidad de ser beneficiada con la beca BUS. Estaba buscando la oportunidad para que ella pudiese estudiar en una escuela diferente, ya que la oportunidad se presentó, entonces decidimos iniciar el proceso. Gracias a Dios fue una oportunidad que sí nos dieron. Además de eso, las calificaciones que ella poseía en las escuelas eran muy buenas. El motivo mío como madre es que mi hija mejore todavía para que si ella tenga un buen futuro, poder ser una profesional y poder servir a la sociedad.
My daughter, out of my two daughters, the youngest one is the first to receive a Boost scholarship, and so she was able to attend a private school. It is hopes that we have for her to attend a private school to receive a better education and to have a better future.
Si ustedes nos siguen apoyando con la beca BUS, nos apoyan como familia para poder tener una generación de jóvenes con valores y una excelente educación. Esperamos nos continúen apoyando porque es de mucha ayuda para nosotros. Estamos favorecidos y agradecidos como familia y esperamos ustedes tomen en cuenta, nos puedan continuar ayudando para así tener una excelente educación para nuestros hijos.
It is our hope that you continue to support Boost scholarships so that future generations and future children are able to receive education for their moral and intellectual growth. We request that you continue to support these Boost scholarships that strengthen families and communities.
Expresar también que cuando uno encuentra esta oportunidad en la escuela que mi hija asiste, la San Francis Elementary School, he encontrado excelente educación académica, seguridad y sobre todo familia, porque los maestros apoyan en un 100% a los alumnos en cualquier momento, están siempre para apoyarlos. La comunicación de los maestros con los padres de familia es increíble, algo que yo no conocía y ahora estamos experimentando, pero esto fue gracias a que mi hija fue una de las ganadoras de la beca BUS. Y recalco, espero nos continúen ayudando como familia para así poder tener una generación de jóvenes con una excelente educación y valores.
My daughter attends St. Francis Elementary School. She has experienced great support, security, and education at St. Francis Elementary School. We urge and encourage you to continue to support Boost funding for future generations so that my daughter is able to continue to receive this education.
Muchísimas gracias por la atención que nos están prestando.
Thank you so much for the attention that you have given us.
Good afternoon. My name is Taddasa Habte. I'm originally from Africa, Ethiopia. I came here 15 years ago with my wife. My country was governed by dictators. So I personally tortured, abused, and jailed. There was no hope, no dream, no future. I used to live with extreme fear and nightmare. Today, I'm here in front of you with hope, big dream, and bright future. Thank you for American people and the country giving me a warm acceptance and love. I have 3 children. Currently, twin daughters attending St. Francis International School and 1 son who attended St. Francis School, currently goes to high school. I am a taxi driver. As a hardworking cab driver, it would have been extremely difficult for me to afford sending my children to private school, which means St. Francis International School, without Bush scholarship. My kids are very happy about attending this school. My first priority for them is to get a good education and raise them to become a good citizen of society. The Boost program has helped many families just like me give their children a better education, behavior, and opportunity to excel. One of my twins' daughter entered an essay contest last year about citizenship, and she won first place in the Maryland state and second in the country. This just goes to show that her attending St. Francis International School become what she is today. Also, my son, who is currently in high school, used to attend St. Francis International School, graduate last year. The St. Francis International School academic staff evaluated my son and uncovered that he was actually a grade level ahead. So he was able to enter high school even a year earlier because of the education the school gave him. He was able to top his class and perform extremely well on his high school placement test. All of this happened because of the boost that gave me and my wife an opportunity to send my kids to St. Francis International School. I would like to say thank you, and I hope you find in your heart to continue and understand the importance of maintaining and funding the Boost Scholarship for us and for other families. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your testimony. Appreciate the young ones that are here with us as well, experiencing this process. So we appreciate you all as well. Any questions? Delegate Forbes.
Thank you all for coming today. It's not easy to get to Annapolis and to share your stories, but we really appreciate hearing from you. So I thank to the parents and the scholars that are with you. And I really have a great appreciation for the translator because my college Spanish wasn't keeping up. So thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Any other questions? All right, that concludes this particular panel. Thank you so much. The next panel we'll bring up, Felix Ocon, Daphne, Jennifer Zuckerman, and Garrett O'Day. I'm pretty sure I got some of those names right. I mean, just pronounce them when you get here, just to make sure. And we'll go from left to right. Appreciate that. 2 minutes each.
All right. All right, good afternoon, senators and delegates and all distinguished members of this hearing. My name is Felix Ocon. I was born and raised in a small country of Central America. In 2001, my family of 4 siblings and I had a blessing opportunity to move to the United States. It was quite the struggle for a 10-year-old me. My first school here in the United States was Kenmore Middle School in Landover, that's in Prince George's County. It was a struggle for me as a non-English speaker. Still, I have great memories of that school. Soon after, while in high school, sadly, I made lots of wrong decisions and struggled to even graduate. Dealing with many addictions that only by the grace of God and love of family, I was able to overcome. Now, typing this brief testimony takes me back in time, and I can't help but to think, what if I had a different mindset in regards to my own future and education? What if? But I let myself be swallowed by the environment and awful decisions. Of course, it was my decisions that led to my inability to pursue a higher education and a brighter future. Now at 36 years of age, with a loving wife, who she's outside right now, and this is Felix, my son. I only hope to lead my children in the right path, a path of mercy, hope, love, not only for themselves, but for the sake of the greater good, for our society, for our communities, and for our country. I stand here before you without fear of being misunderstood, and I feel as if I can be the voice of many parents who, like me, have had many struggles, but put their livelihoods on the line for their kids to have a higher education than they did. Some have shed tears when their boost rewards were approved. Others also have shed many tears when they were denied. Lastly, and most importantly, I believe, I'm not here to tell any of you how to do your job, but I'm here as a parent, a Marylander, a father who wants his kids to have a better and brighter future than I can only dream of. Certainly, for some families, this dream can only be achieved through a program like Boost. I hope that you take these brief words in consideration, for they come from my heart and many other families' hearts. And God bless you, God bless your work, and God bless your families. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Zuckerman. I'm from the Melvin J. Berman Hebrew Academy in Rockville, Maryland. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent the students of the Melvin J. Berman Hebrew Academy in support of the NSHS funding. This funding has been very beneficial to our school in the last few years, as it has helped our school nurse meet the health needs of our students. Our school nurse, who's very special, Nurse Kotek, but she's not unique among school nurses, works diligently to track vaccination statuses, treat everyday boo-boos for our over 800 students who are aged 2 to 12 to age of 18, and what we like to call diapers to diplomas, administer much-needed medication for many of our students, including those who are diabetic, prone to seizures, allergies, and asthma, and also maintains records, which helps us track illnesses such as noroviruses, COVID, and others. Nurse Kotek, like many other nurses, is a sympathetic ear for students who need a safe adult during stressful times in their development. In addition to everything else she does, Nurse Kotek also leads preventative health initiatives like annualized flu shots for staff and students to try to maximize health and minimize school days and really serve as a public health agent. Additionally, Nurse Kotek serves as a sounding board for our over 200 staff members, including faculty and staff, who can help them navigate the health system. This is particularly helpful for our team members for whom English is a second language. We sincerely hope you will consider restoring this crucial funding for NSHS for this year. It's a great investment in the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff, and in the public health in general as our students go out into the world, and we are very appreciative for your consideration.
Good afternoon, delegates. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak from this table alongside fellow parents who have shared and will continue to share their gratitude for the Booth Scholarship Program, which offers scholarship to low income students to attend public school in Maryland. My name is Daphne Durst. My daughter Molly Durst is currently in 6th grade at St. Francis International School. St. Francis is a private Catholic school with a mission to nurture children to be instrument of God's peace, scholar, and global citizen. Most of the students at St. Francis come from low income household. So the Booth Scholarship will provide significant assistance to each recipient. I was introduced to the Booth Scholarship program during a tough time when I was struggling financially while I was attending nursing school. Then I lost my job during that time. Given all the challenges I was facing, I was extremely concerned about how negatively my daughter education would be impacted if I had to change her school. When my daughter was awarded the Booth Scholarship, I was beyond grateful, and I could focus more on my education without worried how I was going able to cover for her own education. Thank you for allowing me to share my testimony with you in the support of funding the Booth Scholarship. And I also appreciate your assistance in helping low-income families to access the best educational option for their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the subcommittee. Good to see you today. I'm Garrett O'Day with the Maryland Catholic Conference and Maryland CAPE, Vice President of Maryland CAPE, the Non-Public School Coalition. I just want to give a quick shout out and thanks to Laura for being a great budget analyst. I'm sure you all agree. And Donna and Nicole at MSE and Dr. Wright and Alex for their leadership for Maryland's educational system as a whole, including the 100, Rabbi Saab will mention how many non-public school students we have, but we do have about 50,000 Catholic school students in the state, and a number of them do receive Booth scholarships. There's been a lot of talk about that today, and it's important to all of our schools and students, whether they receive those scholarships or not. The parents did most of the talking about that, as you can see, and how important it is, and the details are, more details, of course, are in our written testimony. I do want to point out that what Mr. Felix said about parents being denied, in the last couple of years, respectively, there was, based on the going rates for Boost, 18 million and 15.5 million in need that were evidenced by parents who applied for those. So there are denials and parents who are still not able to receive those scholarships. One more thing we wanted to point out today is just to speak a little bit about the school health and safety program. The money is there in the budget, so we do have that fortunate happenstance. We just need the language put back into place for that program. So we are, to be clear, not asking for additional funds. It is in there. This program is providing school nurses and school security to Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, and other students, and the money is already in the governor's budget, as I said, so please keep the governor's allowance for that program and restore the language to the akin to the governor's supplemental budget number 2 for FY25 for that program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Any questions? Delegate Grace.
Question for Garrett. So some of these students are being denied. Are they students where they have siblings already who are in the Boost program? Or are they just new students that are trying to enter the program?
So siblings are given priority if they already have siblings in under the budget language, I believe, that you all have put in year after year. So no to siblings. As far as the folks that are getting denied, priority is given first to students who are attempting to transfer from a public school and to students that, now every boost student is free and reduced meals eligible, so the free meals eligible, the lower income of the lower income, so to speak, do get priority. So a lot of those kids that are getting denied are reduced meals, for example, or there's just not enough money to go around a lot of the time in the program to sort of meet the demand for it. And the priority is laid out in the budget language, of course. So they're just kind of the folks that get left behind.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions? Mr. O'Day, are you here representing the entire Maryland Cape?
Yeah, I'm the Vice President of Maryland Cape, but also I believe Rabbi Sadwin is here, and he is the President of Maryland Cape. 138,000 plus non-public students, and that's our coalition.
Absolutely. He's had you all here twice, so I guess I'll be bringing him up next. Appreciate that, and then we appreciate little Felix being here as well. Appreciate you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, for the next round here, so we bring up, so I actually just have Maryland Cape on here, so I bring you up, sir. Come on up. And then I bring up the superintendent of schools, Maryland School for the Blind, Mr. Roberts. Come on up as well.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair. I'll be very brief. For the record, my name is Rabbi Ariel Sadwin, the president of Maryland Cape, representing 138,000 non-public school students attending 1,000 non-public schools. I'm also the executive director of Agudath Israel Maryland, representing about 10,000 Jewish day school students attending 30 Jewish day schools across the state. I too wish to extend my warmest appreciation and acknowledgement of basically everyone behind me in the first row, the superintendent, the assistant, deputy, director of government relations, and everyone back at MSDE headquarters who really put everything into these programs that are so beneficial to our community. I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues mentioned other than thanking the support of this subcommittee, thanking the work of DLS for all the efforts they put into maintaining and ensuring that these programs are what they are. And we're hopeful that the full allocations, as in the governor's budget, as mentioned by Dr. Wright, are funded. Thank you so much.
Vice Chair Harris, members of the committee, Ms. Hyde, thank you for your analysis. I'm Rob Hare, the superintendent at the Maryland School for the Blind. MSB is more than a school. It's a lifeline for over 1,400 students that are blind and their families from around the state of Maryland from all 24 jurisdictions. We provide Braille books, instruction, specialized technology, job training, instruction for students with multiple disabilities, services that public schools simply cannot always provide. MSB makes it possible for Maryland to meet federal IDEA requirements by providing educational support for students both in local public schools as well as through our traditional campus school program. We do everything. Without MSB, many students would be forced into costly out-of-state placements, separating them from their families as well as their communities. Over the last 7 years since I became superintendent, with your help, we've overcome significant financial challenges at the school. MSB has cleaned house by terminating our pension plan, consolidating debt, and with you, we've helped us to increase state funding by achieving wage parity, which has really helped improve the lives of our lowest paid staff and helped us with our recruitment of our highly qualified staff to work with our students. And thanks to permanent capital funding and the elimination of the matching requirements, MSB is in the strongest position that it's been in many, many years. But MSB is at risk. The proposed per pupil funding cuts threaten MSB, especially in the out years. Soon compensation will outpace state funding, and therefore we won't be able to compete with local schools for our staff once again and be able to hire the specialized teachers and the staff that we need to meet our students' IEP needs. So MSB is striving to be good model stewards and partners with the state, and so our ask is very simple, to please protect the per pupil funding that makes it possible for us to serve Maryland students. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Any questions? All righty, that concludes our budget hearing for MSD educational organizations. And now we're gonna jump to MSD early childhood development, and we got our budget analyst, Ms. Andrade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the fiscal 26 allowance for the Maryland State Department of Education's Division of Early Childhood. On page 1, the fiscal 26 budget decreases by $4 million, or 0.5%, to $827.5 million. At the bottom of page 4 begins a discussion of performance measures. On page 5, Exhibit 1 presents kindergarten readiness trends. Maryland kindergarteners demonstrating readiness increased from 40% in the 21-22 school year to 44% in the 23-24 school year. Though English learners and children with disabilities still show lower readiness levels compared to other groups. A report on the evaluation of racial, cultural, and linguistic bias in the KRA was submitted by MSDE to the AIB in February 2024. The report raises concerns about the potential racial, cultural, and linguistic bias in the KRA, particularly in assessment design, language variations, and potential disadvantages for students from diverse backgrounds. MSD has indicated that the department is moving away from the current KRA. So MSD should comment on the planned timeline for implementing the new assessment, how it will address concerns about bias, what steps will be taken to ensure a smooth transition for educators and students, and the impact of the AIB's monitoring on this process. At the bottom of page 6, there is a discussion of the trends in childcare capacity. Exhibit 2 on page 8 highlights declines in childcare capacity. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, childcare capacity has dropped and has yet to recover to pre-pandemic levels. MSD should comment on the factors contributing to the continued decline in childcare slots, despite the lower rate of decline following the pandemic. The agency should also outline its strategies or plans to address the persistent loss of capacity and work toward recovery, particularly in regions most affected. Additionally, MSD should discuss any challenges or barriers that have hindered the return to pre-pandemic levels of childcare availability. It could be helpful for the agency to provide insight into the broader impact of these trends on families and communities, as well as any initiatives in place to support childcare providers in expanding or maintaining capacity in the future. On page 8, the fiscal 26 budget includes a proposed deficiency of $116.6 million in general funds for the Division of Early Childhood to cover an expected shortfall in the childcare scholarship program due to higher than expected participation in the program. On page 9, Exhibit 3 shows a breakdown of the fiscal 26 allowance. As you can see, $495 million is allocated to the childcare scholarships, and $199 million to publicly funded pre-kindergarten, and $48 million to the Division of Early Childhood. Exhibit 4 on pages 10 and 11 shows the proposed budget change. The $4 million decrease is primarily driven by a $30.9 million reduction in general fund support for the childcare scholarship program, an $11.6 million decrease due to the conclusion of the federal Birth to 5 grants, a $4.3 million reduction in federal COVID relief funds, and a $2.2 million decrease due to the end of mandated funding for the therapeutic childcare program. These reductions are partially offset by a $37.8 million increase in pre-kindergarten formula funding. Personnel section on page 12 shows that the fiscal 26 allowance includes funding for 4 new positions consisting of 3 new PINGs for early childhood and 1 contractual conversion. On page 13 begins the issues section. The first issue is related to the Child Care Scholarship Program. The program provided financial assistance with childcare tuition to 34,147 eligible children and over 22,907 families per month on average in fiscal 24. Exhibit 5 on page 14 shows that the enrollment in the Child Care Scholarship Program grew significantly from 15,296 children in January 21 to 42,478 in December 2024. That is a 178% increase. On page 15, Exhibit 6 shows the Child Care Scholarship expenditures by fund source. As you can see, the total fund spending on Child Care Scholarship payments increases significantly by $332.7 million from fiscal 22 through the fiscal 26 allowance. Due to the ongoing cost of programmatic changes, enrollment growth, and the expiration of one-time ARPA support, Child Care Scholarship Program expenses began exceeding available federal funds in the fiscal 23. MSD closed fiscal 24 with a deficit and anticipates a continued shortfall in fiscal 25, as rising participation is expected to surpass the program's appropriation. To address this, the fiscal 26 allowance includes a proposed deficiency, as I mentioned earlier. On page 16 begins a discussion of fiscal 26 cost containment measures. On January 31st, 2025, MSD notified the Maryland General Assembly of its plan to implement an enrollment freeze for the Child Care Scholarship Program beginning May 1st, 2025 and continuing through September 25. Exhibit 7 on page 16 provides the Child Care Scholarship enrollment freeze estimates. As you can see, assuming a 3.5% monthly attrition, enrollment will decline to 40,633 by August 1st, 2025. At that point, the department will manage the program within a new cap of approximately 40,000 children due to the budget constraints, with an estimated total cost of $497 million. Once enrollment reaches the cap, new enrollees will be admitted only as children leave the program, maintaining a steady enrollment of 40,000 children. Furthermore, the department plans to implement a new provider reimbursement rate based on the 60th percentile of the 24 market rate survey starting in September 25. MSD indicated that the fiscal 26 allowance incorporates provider reimbursement rates at this level, and these changes will enable the department to implement the Child Care Scholarship Program within budget and serve approximately 40,000 children. MSD should explain how the new lower market rates impact families, particularly in relation to copayments. Additionally, MSD should compare the new payment rate with existing ones to assess whether provider payment will increase given the shift from the 70th percentile of the previous rates to the 60th percentile of the new rates. Finally, on pages 18 and 19, there is a plan to implement a wait list of families. On page 19 begins the second issue that provides an overview of early childhood program funding under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. The fiscal 26 allowance includes $269.6 million in total funds for Blueprint mandates supporting early childhood programs, with the majority, that is $236 million, budgeted as a special funds from the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Fund. All early childhood programs expanded or funded through Chapter 36 meet their mandated funding levels in the fiscal 26 allowance. However, the Maryland Child Care Credential Program does not receive funding in fiscal 26 as required by Chapter 165 of 2024. MSD acknowledges this omission as an oversight and indicates that funding for the program will be included in a supplemental budget. Exhibit 8 on page 21 shows that fiscal 26 pre-kindergarten formula funding increases by $37.8 million compared to the fiscal 25 working appropriation. Exhibit 9 on page 23 presents funding levels and enrollment for publicly funded full-day pre-kindergarten slots beginning in fiscal 2018. The fiscal 2025 working appropriation and fiscal 26 allowance includes $135 million and $173 million for the pre-kindergarten formula, respectively. This fund will support 20,744 children in fiscal 25 and 23,894 children in fiscal 26 across public and private pre-kindergarten slots. The Blueprint expansion strategy relies on both types of providers, yet many local school systems struggle to recruit private providers. Through the 23-24 school year, at least 30% of pre-kindergarten slots in each Maryland county were required to provide through private programs. However, no county met this requirement and all requested waivers. In response to challenges, we implemented the mixed delivery system. Chapter 165 of 2024 modified the phasing requirement for local boards of education starting in the 24-25 school year. The minimum is set at 10% with a 10 percentage point increase each year, reaching 50% by the 28-29 school year. At the bottom of page 23 begins issue 3, related to the revised pre-kindergarten sliding scale methodology. MSDE is required to implement a sliding scale to subsidize pre-kindergarten services for families earning more than 300% of the federal poverty guidelines, but not exceeding the 600% by the start of the 24-25 school year. The BERFA of 24 deferred the rollout to the 25-26 school year. In addition, the BERFA accelerated the phasing of the pre-kindergarten per pupil amount. In fiscal 26, the per pupil rate is $14,473. Maryland will reach the full per pupil rate in fiscal 27 at $19,950 instead in fiscal 2030. According to MSDE, the pre-K sliding scale is based on a family's income and for each child will not exceed 7% of a family's gross annual income. The transition to the new model will be phased in gradually with only a portion of a sliding scale for families between 301% and 360% of federal poverty guidelines taking effect in the 25-26 school year. The full sliding scale for all Tier 2 families will be implemented in the 26-27 school year. MSD should comment on the readiness of public schools to implement and administer family share payments under the new sliding scale model. Additionally, MSD should address the preparedness in private pre-K providers to serve families in the expanded eligibility groups and clarify how the program will operate under the revised structure. While expanding access to early education is a priority, these changes pose significant budgetary pressures. The combination of eligibility growth and raising per pupil cost could require substantial new state funding at a time when fiscal constraints are a growing concern. As shown in Exhibit 10, to ensure a more sustainable implementation of a full-day pre-kindergarten, DLS recommends modifications to the statutory requirements. 1, to maintain the current 360% of federal poverty guidelines eligibility cap through fiscal 2030 instead of expanding to 600% of the federal poverty guidelines in fiscal 27. And 2, to reduce the scheduled per pupil funding increase in fiscal 27 by setting an amount at $17,211 per student instead of $19,950 before resuming the planned increases in subsequent years. Exhibit 11 shows that these changes result in a reduction in state aid for full pre-kindergarten and associated education funding programs with cumulative savings of $113.3 million over fiscal 27 through fiscal 2030. Finally, on page 28, the DLS recommendation is to adopt committee narrative requesting quarterly reports on Child Care Scholarship Program enrollment, expenditures, and waiting list. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Any question for that analyst? No question. Bring it back up, Madam Superintendent, and your team. Good to see you again. It's been so long.
Thank you so much for having us. As I said before, Carrie Wright, State Superintendent of Schools, and with me, I've introduced Christian Cholor, who's the Deputy State Superintendent for Operations and Finance, and I want to introduce Jenna Smith, who is the Acting Assistant Superintendent for the Department of Early Childhood. And once again, hats off to our analyst, Ms. Andrade. Thank you so much for what you've done and for being a good partner with us. As we begin, I'd like to share an update on the important work that is taking place in the department related to early childhood education and childcare. And I will also address some of the questions from the analysts, from the analysis that MSDE was asked to comment on. MSDE's Division of Early Childhood is responsible for the administration of child care as well as early education programs. The important work done by this department ensures that the youngest learners in Maryland are cared for in a safe and nurturing environment and that they are kindergarten ready. As you know, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future established a comprehensive framework to transform Maryland's education system, with Pillar 1 focusing on early childhood education. This pillar emphasizes expanding access to high-quality pre-kindergarten programs for 3- and 4-year-olds, prioritizing equitable access for low-income families, and leveraging a mixed delivery system that includes both public schools and private providers, such as Head Start programs, community-based child care centers, family child care homes, and private schools. In January 2025, the AIB and the State Board of Education established a joint policy providing implementation direction to maximize the number of students served in Maryland's mixed delivery pre-kindergarten system. Pre-K expansion grants are an important avenue to increasing access to high-quality pre-K programs. We acknowledge the importance of making the pre-K expansion grant application accessible to non-English speaking providers. For the FY26 application cycle, the application is available online using the Qualtrics platform, which offers several options to provide the application in multiple languages, including Spanish. The Early Childhood Department is also working on making the application easier, streamlining the process, and enhancing customer service in collaboration with the Maryland Family Network and the pre-K informational sessions tailored to specific audiences. MSDE was asked to comment on the planned timeline for implementing the new assessment, or the kindergarten readiness assessment, how it will address concerns about bias, what steps will be taken to ensure a smooth transition for educators and students, and the impact of the AIB's monitoring on this process. I would like to share with you that MSDE is strongly committed to ensuring that all school and instructional staff administering the new Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, or KRA, are highly qualified and equipped to conduct the assessment with fidelity and sensitivity to the children's diverse backgrounds and needs. To achieve this, the department will implement multiple strategies, including a comprehensive training program. All staff involved in KRA administration will undergo rigorous, standards-aligned training. Training will include guidance for supporting students with disabilities and sessions on administering the assessment in Spanish and interpreting data and planning instruction for our multilingual learners. In addition, ongoing professional development opportunities will be implemented. Finally, we will implement robust quality assurance measures, including the regular monitoring of assessment practices and feedback mechanisms to identify and address any inconsistencies or areas needing improvement. The 24-25 school year has been used for training and planning implementation for the new KRA, which will be administered starting in the fall of 2025. MSDE was also asked to comment on slow recovery and continued declines in post-pandemic trends in child care capacity from July 2020 to July 2021. Maryland's licensed child care capacity dropped by 10,249 slots, reflecting a 4.7% decrease. Overall child care capacity has not recovered to pre-pandemic levels, but has remained relatively consistent since the COVID-19 decline. The most recent figures show a larger increase of 1,571 slots from July 23 to July 24. Maryland's investment in advance payment, presumptive eligibility, and the Child Care Scholarship Family Portal and the Child Care Provider Portal has supported child care providers and assisted the ability to maintain capacity in the future, as evident by the increase in the number of children, families, and providers participating in the Child Care Scholarship Program from January 2023 to present. A child care supply and demand study is currently being conducted by Maryland Philanthropy and is expected to be completed in the early fall of 2025. The governor's FY26 budget also allocates historic investments in the Child Care Scholarship Program, with $500 million going directly to scholarships, reflecting almost a 400% increase over FY23 funding. This investment underscores the administration's commitment to affordable, high-quality child care. Since January 2023, program participation has grown by 66%, serving nearly 16,000 additional children. Despite historic investments, fiscal analysis shows a need to pause new enrollments starting in May of 2025. On January 31st, 2025, MSDE notified the General Assembly of its plan to implement an enrollment freeze for the Child Care Scholarship Program beginning May 1 of 2025 and continuing through September 2025. Once enrollment reaches the cap, new children will be admitted as children leave the program, maintaining a steady enrollment of 40,000 students. MSDE also proposed reimbursement rates at the 60th percentile of the 2024 market rate survey. The State Board of Education has also established an early childhood education and care work group. This work group will meet quarterly to work to strengthen communication, collaboration, and connection among early childhood stakeholders, existing MSD early childhood committees, and the State Board of Education. I'd like to close my remarks by reiterating MSDE's commitment to ensure Maryland remains a national leader in the child care space. I will now turn to Mr. Tallur to provide responses to the remaining questions from the analysis. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Harris, the members of the committee. I also want to take a moment to thank you for your commitment and hard work to the care and learning of Maryland's youngest learners. And thanks to Ms. Natalie Andrade once again for her thorough analysis and coordination with the department. As a follow-up to Dr. Wright's testimony, MSD was asked to comment on cost containment measures under the CCS program, impact on co-payments and service providers. Beginning in September 2025, childcare scholarships will be reimbursed at the rate of 60th percentile of 2024 market rate survey narrow cost analysis. This reimbursement rate is in alignment with the Maryland statute and the governor's budget. Providers across the region can expect to see an increase in or a reimbursement rate that remains stable. The change in reimbursement rates will not affect families' co-payment. Families will continue to be responsible for the cost of care that's not covered by the scholarship and co-payment. MSDE is able to provide information on childcare scholarship expenditures, enrollment, and status of waitlist as recommended in the analysis. DLS also recommended modification to the statutory requirements. One, to maintain the current 360% of the federal poverty guidelines eligibility cap through fiscal 2030, instead of expanding to 600% of FPG in FY 2027, and to reduce the scheduled per pupil funding increase in fiscal 2027 by setting an amount at $17,211 per student instead of $19,950. Before resuming the planned increases in the subsequent years. MSDE respectfully disagrees and supports governor's allowance. MSDE was asked to comment on the readiness of public schools to implement and administer family share payments under the new sliding scale model. Additionally, MSDE was also asked to address the preparedness of private pre-K providers to serve families in the expanded eligibility groups and clarify how the program will operate under the revised structure. According to law, beginning 2025-2026, the sliding scale will be implemented for families in tiers 2 and 3. These are the higher income families compared to the tier 1 families. Families can be required to contribute a family share amount to cover all or part of the per pupil cost of the pre-kindergarten services. Both public and private providers serving tiers 2 and 3, 4-year-olds may choose to collect the family share but are not required to do so. Public schools do not typically collect fees from families and would need to establish a mechanism, possible systems or personnel to do so if they choose to collect parent fees. Private providers, however, are tuition-based and regularly collect tuition and fees from families and therefore would be able to begin collecting the family share payments immediately. MSDE is implementing a simpler 5-level structure, including a copay calculator that is available for providers and families. MSDE has increased its efforts to include additional private providers in the public pre-kindergarten program by providing targeted outreach and technical assistance to support successful entry into the program. Additionally, once private providers are participating in the public pre-K programs, they receive ongoing technical assistance from MSDE's programmatic and fiscal staff to implement all aspects of the program efficiently. Regarding the recommended budget actions, MSDE concurs with the DLS recommendation on providing quarterly reports with the required data points. With that, we end our testimony and stand ready for questions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate the response to the DLS questions. Any questions from the committee? Delegate Grice.
Thank you. My first question, I really don't know the answer to this, and I should by now, actually, as many briefings as I've been to in regards to the blueprint. 3-year-old pre-K is not mandated by law that a parent has to send their 3-year-old to pre-kindergarten. So when we're talking about this number of slots, is there a mandate in the blueprint that says each LEA has to have a certain number of pre-K slots available?
Jim? No, I don't believe that's the case at all, because it would really vary depending on the LEA and the location, because you can imagine that, you know, a district like a Baltimore County or a Montgomery County would have access, if you will, to more 3-year-olds than, say, a district like Somerset or Kent. So I think it would really depend on the size of the district and their ability to have and house 3-year-olds.
So the only mandate on the LEAs is that they, out of the total number of slots, which we don't know, there is no mandate for a number of slots for each LEA, that they cover 70% of them, and then the private sector, private providers cover the 30%. That's really the only mandate in the blueprint, right, in regards to 3-year-old pre-K or
I would need to look on that. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to get back to you on the 70-30 piece. I don't know that. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And is this, I mean, in your opinion, I mean, is Pillar 1 really achievable, to be quite honest? Because the challenges that our LEAs have, obviously, is building new classrooms or building space. And, you know, obviously, our capital budget is strained, and we have the IAC coming in next, and they may be able to better answer that question in regards to how our both our local governing bodies and our LEAs are really set up to be able to expand our pre-K, you know, as far as the capital expansion. But the real challenge is on the private side. I didn't realize that we don't even have any of our counties who are even at 20%. I think Worcester was the highest at 17, and some of the counties are 0. And you know, we can probably, you know, quadruple the amount of money that we're putting into the child care scholarship, but we can't force, you know, the private sector to grow and expand. We can only provide these incentives. So, I mean, is this even achievable, even in the short or even in the long term?
Well, let me take it from this standpoint. There is so much longitudinal research about the importance of early childhood programming, high quality early childhood programming. And the longitudinal studies that have been done for children that do attend high quality programs, they are more likely to be reading by the end of grade 3, more likely to graduate on time, more likely to find a job, less likely to be involved in the police, less likely to be involved in drugs. So there's a lot of positives from getting children early on in learning in a high-quality early childhood programming. I think that's I refer to Pillar 1 as there's a reason it's number 1, because it's the foundation for all the other pillars. And I can't tell you the importance of getting children into a high-quality program, and not only the skills that they may learn academically, but also the social skills that we want children to learn, the behavioral skills we want children to learn, the language modeling that takes place in those classrooms. I can't say enough about it. I've been involved in early childhood almost my entire career, and I have seen the actual benefits of high-quality early childhood programming.
Right, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. You know, in fact,
Space, I do know, I will acknowledge I've heard from the superintendents that space is an issue. And so one of the things that we may need to look at, and that's certainly under IEC's purview, not mine, but how we are defining spaces for early childhood programs, and how flexible are we being in where we can look and place early childhood programs. I don't have one superintendent that says, I don't want to put 3 or 4-year-olds in my building. That's not what we're hearing. We're hearing, I just need more space in order to put them in the building and to provide the programming. So you're right. That's what we're hearing from the superintendents as well.
And no, I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. I've been a huge advocate for pre-K over the last several years, and the dilemma that we're in is that the private providers are the ones that have more flexibility to be able to put a daycare center in basically anywhere, and they don't have to go through this very stringent capital improvement process that we have to go through with the IEC and our public schools have to go through. They can just put a daycare center in a shopping mall somewhere, and it's much easier for them to do that. And I think this partnership, certainly with our federal Head Start programs, they have the flexibility also to be able to expand and grow where they don't have the same constraints that our public school systems have as well. But I just think that overall, though, I just have my doubts about just the way the blueprint is written, you know, if we can achieve our goals. And I think that our goals are similar. I think we want to get as many of our 3-year-olds, you know, into a program where we have highly trained teachers to help them. And, you know, teaching a 3-year-old is a lot different than teaching a middle schooler.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And we know that Pillar 1 is, as I tell other folks, it's a good foundation. It's a foundation that we must have, as well as ensuring that our early childhood education is vital for our success all the way through. So appreciate the question, appreciate the response. Any other questions? All righty, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, we do have, okay.
Delegate Forbes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Dr. Wright, and your panel. We really appreciate your comments today. I want to talk about the child care scholarship and the freeze. We have started few programs that were so successful and so needed. And it was clear by the enrollment in it how much it meant to families, and we saw it in our workforce that people could go back to work because they had childcare. When you're capping the enrollment going forward, and I understand the financial constraints, will you be keeping a list of how many people we're not serving, and will you be able to provide estimates of how many people aren't even on that list that we could be serving? So we know the need?
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. As part of our letter that was submitted to the MGA, we did have to respond how we are going to track the waiting list. And there are rules that are set forth in COMAR that we have to follow in setting the waiting list, and then we'll be able to provide that information.
And do you know how frequently you'll be reporting to us on that?
We will, I don't think that's been established here, but we will work with you on that one.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Great question. Anyone else? Make sure I'm looking at these red lights. Okay, good. Appreciate it. We do got some witnesses here. So we have Ms. Laura, Ms. Christina, Ms. Ellie. Come on up. And once you get there, we get started. Each will have 2 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you.
We'll start from the left and work our way down.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Harris and honorable members. I'm Laura Wheeldryer. I'm the Executive Director of Maryland Family Network. I want to thank the analyst for her report, and a big thank you to the department, Dr. Wright, for their work on behalf of young children. I'm here today to ask for your support of the Division of Early Childhood's budget and would like to lift up 3 key points for your consideration. First, thanks to historic investments by this body and this administration, the Child Care Scholarship Program is serving a record number of children. We remain extremely concerned that the proposed cap on enrollment will restrict families' access to child care. We urge you to sustain investments in the Child Care Scholarship Program so families are not turned away when they apply. Delegate Forbes mentioned the success of this program. Right now, as successful as it is, we're serving 14% of eligible children in this state. Point number 2, maintain the value of child care scholarship, and by that I mean don't reduce the reimbursement rate. In 2019, Speaker Jones's last bill as a member of this committee set a floor below which the reimbursement rates could never fall below. Currently, the state reimburses at the 70th percentile of the market rate. Please reject the proposal to drop to the 60th percentile. Sustaining the value of the scholarship as close to the cost of care as possible will achieve expanded market access for parents, increased reimbursements for providers, and ultimately higher quality care for children. We recognize the state is facing fiscal challenges. I get that. Additional data from the department on child care scholarship enrollment projections and costs could inform this committee's decision-making process. We urge you to choose cost containment strategies that are least harmful to families and providers. Please ensure adequate funding for these important programs. Thank you so much.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you to the committee. I'm Chris Push, Executive Director of the Maryland State Child Care Association, and you have my written testimony, which addresses the need to find funding or to continue to fund the Child Care Scholarship Program. However, without the numbers to determine how much it costs to continue, I'm at a loss to figure out what to do next. Another critically important concern is the law requiring FY 2026 budget funding for the Child Care Credentialing Program, as it is a direct lifeline and support for the essential child care workforce. Child care is an economic and equity imperative, and the workforce behind the workforce. Child care is in decline, and the child care workforce in Maryland is not recovering at the same rates as most other states. The average salary for a child care teacher in our state is $34,000. The Comptroller's recent State of the Economy reports shows significantly more experience and training is required to become a licensed child care worker in Maryland than other similarly paid positions. Child care prices are high due to cost drivers related to regulations and skyrocketing expenses, and consumer prices are high in large part because providers' costs are high, as child care operates on razor-thin, tight budgets, usually less than 1%. Businesses cannot charge families more to improve wages and other benefits, as child care is already more expensive than college tuition in Maryland. This is why the credentialing program is important. The fact that the budget did not include funding for the Child Care Credential Program, a direct workforce investment, is deeply concerning oversight. This is a huge disconnect between the governor, MSDE, and the child care community. How is this mission possible when the program funding is required due to the passage of House Bill 1441 last session, due to the 11,000 emails to 2 state leaders from child care workforce begging to restore the program, and due to this topic being on all the agendas each month in every meeting with MSDE over the last year? We ask that you restore the Child Care Credential Program and do not let our essential workforce wait another year to receive their desperately needed bonuses and training money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Ellie Colmers on behalf of SEIU Local 500, who represent over 20,000 workers throughout the DMV, including childcare workers, and a member of your committee, Delegate McCaskill. So I would like to echo and raise up everything that both Laura and Chris here has said, and just again, voice our concern that the Child Care Credential Program that had mandated funding in FY26 through HB 1441 was not in the governor's budget, and it was not in the BRFA. And so we appreciate that the department has acknowledged this oversight. So we would strongly recommend that this committee make sure that it's in the supplemental budget, and if not, take measures to make sure that we can find that funding. Additionally, I would echo the requests to take a look at cost containment measures instead of freezing the child care scholarship program, and to reject the cuts to the reimbursement rates. You heard that only 14% of eligible children are being served. That means 86% are about to be frozen out. This is absolutely necessary as we're talking about needing to raise revenue, needing to get people back to work, and investing in Maryland's economy. How can we expect them to do that when you're worrying about whether, if it costs less to stay home than to send your kid to childcare? So, we ask that you take what we've said here into consideration, and thank you very much for your time.
No, thank y'all so much for your testimony. We appreciate you and appreciate all the work that you all are doing in this field. So thank you so much. Any questions? Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that concludes our budget hearing for early childhood. And we'll keep it rolling. We have our Interagency Commission on School Construction, and we have our budget analyst, Laura Hyde, back with us.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, this is Laura Hyde, and I am presenting the IAC headquarters budget. Starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary, the fiscal 2026 budget for IAC increases by approximately $900,000, or 5.3%, to $18.2 million. The majority of this funding, $10 million, is for the Public School Safety Grant Program, which is funded as part of IAC's operating budget. Turning to page 3, Exhibit 1 shows the fiscal 2026 overview of agency spending, which includes the $10 million for school safety grants, $6.7 million for personnel, $1.1 million for contractual services, and approximately $400,000 for routine operating expenses. Changes in IAC's budget from fiscal 2025 to 2026 are shown in Exhibit 2 on pages 4 and 5. At the bottom of page 5 is IAC's personnel data, which shows IAC has 44 regular positions in fiscal 2026, with 3 positions vacant, including a capital projects manager, a facilities assessor, and a special projects manager. Turning to the issues section, starting on page 6, IAC is responsible for reporting requirements associated with school construction, including requirements that were updated in Chapter 32 of 2022 as part of the recommendations from the work group on the assessment of and funding of school facilities, which convened in calendar 2021. The first report with the new requirements was due in October 2023, and in February 2024, IAC agreed to turn in a separate report with an update on these tasks as soon as possible. However, even though IAC acknowledges the agreement to submit this information in a separate report, it has not been submitted. And the bold language on the top of page 7 is the DLS recommendation to add budget bill language to restrict funds pending the submission of this report as required in Chapter 32. On pages 7 through 9 is Exhibit 3, which shows the status of all IAC's mandated reports. In addition to Chapter 32 reporting requirements, IAC has not submitted 6 mandated reports due in calendar 2023, 2024, and 2025. The bold language on page 9 asks IAC to comment on the reasons for the delays in submitting required reports, and DLS also recommends adding budget bill language to restrict funds pending the submission of overdue reports. On the bottom of page 9 and on page 10, there's an update on the cloud-based library system required in Chapter 14 of 2018, which is partially in use and expected to be fully functional by the end of calendar 2025. Recommended actions start on page 11. This ends my presentation, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much for your analysis. I appreciate it. Any questions? All right, we'll bring up our the agency up, Interagency Commission on School Construction. Come on up. We're excited to hear from you. We're excited to hear about those missing reports, too.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's good to see you. For the record, I'm Alex Donahue, Executive Director of the Interagency Commission on School Construction. With me today are Cassandra Viscara, Deputy Director, and Sadi Abrar, Chief Financial Officer. Chair Casemeyer sends his regrets that he could not be here today due to an unavoidable schedule conflict. I do expect him to be here with us on Monday for our capital budget hearing. But first, I want to thank you for this opportunity to respond to questions and comment on the operating budget of the IAC. And more importantly, I thank you for your strong and continuing consistent support for public school construction in Maryland. And I want to thank Laura Hyde for her excellent analysis and always steadfast support. The Commission and their staff are tasked with a significant mission to provide leadership and resources to local education agencies to develop and sustain school facilities so that all Maryland public school students, teachers, administrators, and staff have safe and educationally sufficient environments in which to teach and learn. In our written testimony, we responded to the analyst questions and provided additional information that may be of interest to the members of the committee. Today, we'll be happy to respond to any questions you have about the IEC's work. But first, I'd like to provide some context for the IEC's operating budget and an update on the agency's work. The scope of the IEC's work is much greater than it used to be. Through the 21st Century School Facilities Act in 2018, the Built to Learn Act in 2020, and subsequent legislation and budget bills, the General Assembly significantly expanded the work of the IEC in four main ways. First, it has more than doubled the annual average amount of state capital grant funds administered by the IEC to about $880 million a year, from an average of less than $400 million a year across the previous 10 years. Second, it increased the number of statutorily mandated facilities assessments from about 150 to 500 per year. Third, it greatly expanded the amount of technical assistance that the IEC provides to local school districts ongoingly around their school facilities portfolio management work. And fourth, it required that the IEC replace its antiquated legacy information systems with modern cloud-based systems that permit far more efficient and effective transactional services to school districts and more transparent management of state funds, among other benefits. Procuring, configuring, and implementing these online systems have required hundreds of hours of staff time, and that effort is not yet complete. As Laura noted, it should be complete by the end of this calendar year with the second of the two major systems that we have been implementing. IEC staff have done all of these things at a total operational cost equal to about 1% of its capital grant budget, a fraction of the 5 to 12% overhead rate typically associated with public and philanthropic grant management organizations. At the same time, IEC staff have improved the agency's relationship with school districts and stakeholders, including legislators, such that the IEC is now a sought-after partner in meeting the facilities-related challenges facing the local jurisdictions and the state. But this massive and successful expansion of the IEC's responsibilities over the past 7 years is but a precursor to the heavy lift that will be required of the IEC on behalf of the state in the coming years. The mission of the IEC is to achieve a safe, healthy, and educationally sufficient learning environment for every child attending a public school in Maryland. As I reported to the Budget and Taxation Committee and Appropriations Committee in recent months, as well as to the presiding officers and to Governor Moore, the doubling of the cost of school construction over the last 12 years and the natural process of wear and tear on Maryland's aging school facilities, many of which were built 30 to 50 years ago, are pushing the average condition of Maryland school buildings significantly below the level that's fiscally sustainable and in some cases that is educationally sufficient. The coming 3 to 5 years is our window of opportunity as a state to develop a plan to get every school district to an educationally sufficient and fiscally sustainable portfolio of school facilities. And that plan will have to be affordable within the context of the tight budgets that we expect to surround us all. The IEC has collected most of the data required to help guide the development of such plans, and we intend, in partnership with the local school districts and our colleagues at the Maryland Energy Administration, to obtain within the next 2 years the rest of the data that the school and the state needs. Our work in coming years will not be easy, but we know what needs to be done and we know how to go about doing it. With your support, we will help Maryland school districts map the way forward to fiscally sustainable school facilities, and we'll make real progress toward getting there. I won't read our written testimony in response to the specific questions provided by DLS unless you have specific ones on certain reports, but I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Appreciate that. I think the committee would love to hear about the missing reports. I think
Absolutely.
It's extremely important for us to hear about that because we're talking about 3 years worth here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The first report is a statewide contingency report for fourth quarter of 2024. That report was submitted last week. Second report is the Baltimore City 21st Century Schools 2023 and 2024 annual reports. Those two reports are actually submitted each year by the Maryland Stadium Authority, not the IAC, on behalf of the parties of which we are one. The IAC did approve the 2023 report on March 14th, 2024, and we had believed that MSA had submitted it shortly thereafter because it needed MSA board approval subsequently. My understanding is that that is being worked out right now, and they had sent it. It might not have gotten through, but they are going to take care of that. They're also in the middle of, right now, bringing that 2024 version to the Board of School Commissioners of the city for approval. That should have happened actually yesterday. MSA board approval was scheduled for March 4th, and then the IAC approval is scheduled for March 13th. As soon as those approvals are completed, that report will be submitted by MSA as well. The next report is the annual maintenance report for fiscal 24, but I believe that specifically the information of interest is the condition information related to House Bill 1290. That information we are close to completing for the fiscal 24 statewide facilities annual report. We intend to have that submitted by the end of April, if not sooner. It needs IAC approval first, and we have put that on the agenda for this coming meeting in March. In addition, the maintenance reports itself were submitted on time last year. That's just not the report that contains the information I think you were interested in on that point. I will skip to the last one and talk a little bit about the Prince George's County P3 report. That report is a report from 4 parties: the IAC, Stadium Authority, Prince George's County, and Prince George's County Public Schools. We are currently coordinating the content between the 4 parties. We're close. We expect that to be in the next few weeks as well. And I can commit that all of these reports will be provided by April 30th of this coming month. So, and on the last 2, solar technologies and alternative energy, Cassandra, if you would describe those, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, so the solar technology report is one that the IAC has been doing for a number of years. The alternative energy systems report is new as of 2024. We are working with our partners at the Department of General Services and the MSDE Office of School Facilities, who are actually the stewards of that information, to be able to collect that information most efficiently by looking at both of those reports together. We will have all of that information within the next month. These are challenging because they do cover the period that ends December 31st. So being able to provide them by December 31st obviously is a little bit hard, but we were very close.
Appreciate that update. It's important for us to ensure that we definitely get the reports, because that's what helps us make decisions that we need to be made, as well as the information that DLS will need to provide us with the expertise that they provide us. And so please let us know if there are things that we need to tweak or ways that we need to make this better for you all to ensure that we get these reports. But it's vital for us to make sure we make that happen in the future. Any other questions from the committee? Delegate Grice.
This is a follow-up, I guess, from the previous discussion. This has to do with a 3-year-old pre-K expansion. And, you know, obviously, I think portable classrooms is always an option, but not for 3-year-olds probably, though. But we've been building portable classrooms for a long time, because building new schools is not a unique challenge. I mean, we've had this challenge even during the good times. And so, what are you all hearing in regards to some of our LEAs who will need to build that new classroom space, either for some or most of their elementary schools? What are they doing? Because right now there's not room in the queue for these projects. What are you hearing some of these LEAs are doing?
That's a great question, Delegate, and thank you for bringing that up as a follow-up. The IAC has been working for the last year plus with the school districts to take a look at their portfolios and identify where they could add pre-K space. And it's different in each case, and there's a real range of options. Some districts are looking for more consolidated new space to offer pre-K seats, new additional pre-K seats, such as a regional pre-K center that could serve students from 3 to 5 different elementary schools. A couple of districts are actually working now to design such new schools, and we have those projects in the pipeline for funding. Other districts are going more on a neighborhood basis and looking to add a little bit of pre-K space, 2-3 classrooms per elementary school. But those solutions are also quite varied, because some schools' sites do not have any more footprint space to add first floor rooms for pre-K. And if they don't have space available in a higher floor to move students of higher grade up, make pre-K in the first floor, then they may be space limited and may have to find a way to add a pre-K space in another school nearby and serve 2 or 3 schools worth. Okay. So it's really a portfolio wide analysis in every case, and the districts are working through what would be the most cost-effective way in each one, and what options and resources do they have. Some that have availability in potentially leased or leasable space. The IAC passed a new policy last year that now allows us to give capital grants to school districts to make renovations and improvements to leased space. That was never the case before, right? And we've created that new option for school districts who don't have any more space in their existing elementaries and are looking to lease space and then need to build it out to serve the students. So we're going to support them where they bring requests of that type. It just requires a long-term lease commitment so that the state's investment is fully realized in the educational services and doesn't accrue to a private owner.
So these projects that are in the pipeline already for a 3-year pre-K expansion, what's the timeline for those initial projects?
So this year we have almost 10 projects total that are in the planning or design stages. Some are to add pre-K in an elementary, or a number of them, and a couple of them are a standalone regional approach. And those will be probably 3 years or so until the seats come open, depending on the construction timeline and when the work is going to be performable.
Kids aren't even born yet.
Essentially, right, essentially. Now, the uptake is not instantaneous in terms of the new demand, right? Families are not all arriving right now at the doors to take those new seats. So school districts are trying to open up new seats in the places where they have a little bit of available capacity, make those seats available to the families who are coming now, plan, design, build the new seats for the families that they hope are coming after these ones, and in some cases are considering grade band shifts to move, say, a 5th grade from an elementary into a middle school where there's capacity to make room for pre-K to be added in the elementary or 3 elementaries in the neighborhood. And that's actually something that we're working with a number of LEAs on to plan in a strategic way and then identify what projects we can support in the short term and the long term to help them implement those expansions.
Like Caroline County, for example, they need a middle school, so just build another middle school that's big enough to carry 1 more grade.
Yes.
And then you eliminate 5th grade in your elementary, all of your elementary schools.
A number of districts are doing that.
And then how many do we know how many elementary, you may not know off the top of your head, how many elementary schools we're talking about in the state?
So what we've quantified actually is the expected demand for new seats under the blueprints requirements, and that's about 300 classrooms statewide.
Okay.
Right? And at an average cost of about $1 million per classroom, averaged over the different types of construction, that's a significant amount that was not budgeted for in a specific program. So that will come out of the CIP when we support those projects, and we'll have some effects on portfolio maintenance.
So the initial is like 3 years, so that could take 8 or 10 years to build out that many classrooms.
Yes, it will take a number of years, absolutely. Now, that's cost, it's not all on the state. There would be state local cost share, right? But the average is around a 60% on the total, so maybe 180 million state cost and 120 for local.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other questions from the committee? All right, appreciate that. That concludes our budget hearing on the Interagency Commission on School Construction. And we're down to our last one, Department of Commerce. We have our analysis from Ms. Elizabeth Weibel, who's been hanging on with us all afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'll be providing the fiscal 2026 budget analysis for the Department of Commerce. The 2026 allowance increases $33.6 million, or 12%, to a total of $310 million. And DLS has a number of recommendations for possible reductions in the budget, which I'll go over. The budget bill also includes a proposed deficiency of $338,000 to be paid to Medco for consulting costs related to the Blue Line Corridor development. On page 6, Exhibit 1 shows an overview of the agency's fiscal 2026 allowance. 27% is for business development, which includes the Office of Business Development, as well as some of the department's grant programs, and proposed funding for the Sunny Day Fund. 25% is for financial assistance, which includes a lot of the department's business incentives and business assistance programs. 20% goes to marketing, tourism, and the arts, which includes the Maryland State Arts Council. And then 19% goes to various tax credits. I'll just highlight a couple of programs. The Build Our Future Grant Pilot Program receives $10 million in mandated funding in the budget, which is an increase from the fiscal working appropriation of $7 million. And DLS recommends reducing the 2026 appropriation to $7 million, level with fiscal 2025. The Tourism Development Board receives a general fund allowance of $12.4 million, which is level with fiscal 2025 and pretty consistent with what the funding has been for the last several years, but it is well above the mandated appropriation of $6 million. So in light of the state's fiscal condition, DLS recommends reducing general funds to the mandated level of $6 million. The Maryland New Start Micro Loan Program receives a mandated allowance of $300,000. This is a relatively new program to provide interest-free loans to currently or formerly incarcerated individuals who are starting small businesses. Although it hasn't had a lot of program activity yet, so there is a fund balance of about $510,000 from prior year's appropriations. DLS recommends deleting the fiscal 26 appropriation and using the existing fund balance instead. On page 9, Exhibit 3 shows the proposed budget change. The biggest change is the inclusion of $25 million in the dedicated purpose account for the Economic Development Opportunities Program, or the Sunny Day Fund. In the past, funds have been appropriated to the Sunny Day Fund on an as-needed basis, usually once an incentive package for a business has been finalized. However, the Governor's Decade Act proposes renaming the fund to the Strategic Closing Fund and establishing it within Commerce, and then having this funding available to move quickly to provide incentives to companies who are looking to relocate to Maryland. DLS has two recommendations: one, to reduce the funding from $25 million to $10 million, and two, to make that funding contingent on the enactment of legislation renaming the fund and establishing it within Commerce. Some other places where funding increases are outlined on page 12. The Industry 4.0 or Manufacturing 4.0 grant program receives $6 million in the 2026 allowance. This program provides grants for small and mid-sized manufacturers to invest in new technology for their businesses. The program has a mandated appropriation of $1 million, and DLS recommends reducing the fiscal 2026 appropriation to the mandated funding level. The allowance also includes $2 million for a grant to BioHub Maryland, and DLS recommends reducing this to $500,000, which is level with fiscal 2025. DLS also recommends deleting funding for a new grant to Ignite Capital, which is a social impact fund in Baltimore. Information about several BRFA provisions relating to commerce programs are on page 10 and 11. One provision I'll mention is would repeal the mandated funding formula for the Maryland State Arts Council, or MSAC. The council currently receives an allowance that is equal to at least the prior year's funding plus whatever percentage the general fund is expected to grow in the next year, and the BRFA would repeal that mandate. The budget as introduced also includes a reduction of about $119,000 contingent on the enactment of that provision. DLS recommends deleting that contingent language and taking a cut directly. We also recommend taking a larger cut and reducing funds by $457,241 to make MSAC's funding for grants equal to the fiscal 25 working appropriation. Personnel data is on page 13. You'll see the allowance includes 4 contractual conversions. The department had 23 vacancies as of December, and DLS has asked Commerce to provide an update on efforts to fill those positions. I'll move on to the issues section, which starts on page 14. There are a number of changes that have been either proposed or put into place in Commerce as part of the Governor's economic development strategy. Some of this strategy comes from an economic development plan that was developed by the Maryland Economic Development Commission, but that plan has not yet been released publicly, and DLS has asked Commerce to provide an update on when the plan will be available. There was also a report recently released by the Maryland Economic Council, which is different from the Maryland Economic Development Commission, that among other things said that the state really needs an integrated development plan as well as better coordination among economic development agencies. There are a lot of different agencies and programs that are working in isolation from each other and sometimes duplicating efforts, and this can be very confusing for businesses who are looking for assistance and also can be rather inefficient. So those two reports are kind of the background context for a lot of these proposed changes. The Decade Act is an administration bill that proposes changes to a number of commerce programs, and I'll just highlight a few of those. One provision would increase the total cap on tax credits for film production that the Department of Commerce can certify. Currently, the limit for those tax credits is $17.5 million in fiscal 2025, $20 million in fiscal 26, and then dropping down to $12 million starting in fiscal 27 and for each year thereafter. The Decade Act proposes keeping that cap at $20 million starting in 2026 and each year after that. The Act would also remove the cap on the amount of tax credits that an individual production can receive. That's currently set at $10 million per production. And DLS proposes using the BRFA to lower the cap to $12 million starting in 2026 and then leaving it there. Part of the reason for that is that there is a lot of competition among states for a very limited number of large-scale productions, and given the fiscal conditions, we would recommend being very strategic about what tax credits the state is offering. The Decade Act would also make a number of changes to the RISE Zone program and transfer it to MEDCO. This is a program that launched in 2015 that allows institutions of higher education to create designated zones in their communities and provides a number of benefits to businesses locating there. However, an evaluation commissioned by Commerce in 2024 found that this program has not produced any economic benefit in its first 8 years, and it just really hasn't been used. And so DLS has asked the department to comment on why this program should be transferred to MEDCO rather than just allowing it to sunset. There's also a $750,000 mandated appropriation for the RISE Zone's Business Rental Assistance Program. However, that fund has not been used and there is an existing fund balance. So DLS recommends deleting that appropriation and using the existing fund balance if needed. Issue 2, starting on page 16, is an update on the More Jobs for Marylanders program. This program provides income tax credits for companies that are creating and maintaining new jobs. And tax credits are equal to a certain percentage of those jobs' wages. Projects can be eligible for 5 to 10 years of credits depending on what area they're located in and when they enrolled in the program. Enrollment in the program closed on May 31st of 2024. There's no cap on the amount of tax credits that can be issued under the program as long as companies are creating and maintaining eligible jobs. Exhibit 4 on page 11, or page 17 rather, shows that credits are projected to reach $100 million annually by 2029, although these estimates are usually pretty high, and in the past more has been appropriated into the reserve fund for the tax credit than has actually been claimed. The fiscal 2026 allowance includes $47.8 million for the program, with $31 million of that in general funds and $16.7 million from the program's reserve fund. The BRFA includes provisions authorizing the governor to transfer up to $4.3 million from the reserve fund to the general fund in fiscal 25, and then requiring that any excess amount in the reserve be transferred to the general fund on an annual basis. Page 19 has an update on the small minority and women-owned business account. This program is funded by 1.5% of video lottery terminal or VLT revenues from casinos. In fiscal 2026, the fund is expected to receive $20.8 million. And this is then distributed to fund managers throughout the state who issue loans to qualified businesses. Historically, there has been more money coming into the fund than fund managers have been able to distribute, although in fiscal 24, they got pretty close. Revenues were $21.7 million, and the fund managers settled $21.3 million worth of transactions. Legislation was enacted last year to allow fund managers to make grants along with loans, so DLS has asked Commerce to provide an update on the implementation of that new policy. You'll see a list of recommended actions on pages 22 and 23. And with that, I can take any questions you have.
Thank you so much for your analysis. Any questions? All righty. We are excited to bring up our acting and new secretary, Mr. Harry Coker. We're excited for you to be here. Looking forward to hearing more from you over the next how long that we're here. But welcome to your first budget hearing in the House of Appropriations.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Harris and subcommittee members. I appreciate the warm welcome, and I also look forward to working with you all, as I do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. For the record, again, I am acting Maryland Commerce Secretary Harry Coker Jr., and I am testifying in support of the Commerce Department's proposed 2026 budget. I'm joined at the table by Deputy Secretary Ricardo Ben, Deputy Secretary Steve Rice, Acting Manager Marcy Ross is standing by, as is Acting Director Steve Scarrett Davis, and Managing Director Jen Lahat, who will be able to answer any questions that you all may have. I'd actually like to start with thanking Elizabeth Weibel and the DLS team for their thoughtful review and analysis of the budget. It has been helpful to us, so thank you. I will keep my testimony fairly brief, but I do want to begin by acknowledging the unique challenges that lie before us. Not only is our state facing a substantial budget gap that we need to close, but we're also at an unprecedented moment in American history with respect to federal funding and our federal workforce. Maryland's federal and military presence has long been a major economic driver for the state, and while we do expect that to continue, the uncertainty that we're facing today highlights the need for a robust, equitable, and strong competitive economy that is less dependent on federal dollars. In short, it's more important than ever for Maryland to make strategic investments in growing our economy. As Governor Moore has pointed out, we are facing structural challenges, and structural challenges require structural solutions. A stronger, more competitive, and more equitable economy is a structural solution. Sustained economic growth is how Maryland will win this decade. The Moore-Miller administration has laid out an ambitious agenda for getting Maryland's economy on track. Some of it was in an executive order on economic development that was signed in December 2024. Some of it is in the aforementioned Decade Act, and some of it is in the proposed fiscal 2026 budget proposal. Commerce's proposed operating budget allowance totals $285.4 million. This includes $150 million in general funds, $124.3 million in special funds, and $11.1 million in federal funds. And it includes 212 permanent positions at the Department of Commerce. This proposal also includes funding for some of our most important business attraction and retention programs, including $17.5 million for Advantage Maryland, or MEDAF, our primary direct assistance program. It includes $12 million to fund the Biotechnology Investment Incentive Tax Credit, or BITSI, a high-demand program supporting investment in one of Maryland's most important industry sectors. It includes funds for, some of our most important small business assistance programs, including $11 million for Ms. BESFA and over $20 million for the Small Minority and Women-Owned Business Account. And it includes $22.5 million for tourism development and $31.3 million for the Maryland State Arts Council. Tourism and arts are not the only important economic drivers in and of themselves, but they are crucial to our business and workforce attraction efforts. The quality of life they provide helps us show that Maryland is a fun, culturally rich place to live, as well as a great place to move your business, because your employees and families will enjoy being here in Maryland. Overall, the governor's proposed budget proposal also funds important initiatives to support growth. Some of these are part of the department's budget, some are not, but they are all part of a larger effort to modernize economic development in Maryland. There's $10 million for the Build Our Future Innovation Economy Infrastructure Program, which provides matching grants to fund programs including wet labs, cyber ranges, and prototype manufacturing centers. These are projects that won't support just one business, but can be resources for industry sectors. There's a total of $10 million for the Child Care Capital Support Revolving Loan Fund, which will help increase the number of available child care slots across the state. There's $6 million for the Manufacturing 4.0 grant program, which provides matching funds for companies to invest in advanced technologies so that they can remain competitive and drive growth. I particularly would like to highlight two other items because they illustrate the administration's focus and strategy for economic development. The first is $27.5 million for the Capital of Quantum initiative at the University of Maryland College Park. The university is already a leader in quantum development, and these funds are expected to leverage $70 million in further investments from the university and other entities over the next 5 years. We want the latest and largest breakthroughs in quantum to happen right here in Maryland. We are uniquely positioned to dominate this industry, but we must act now. Quantum, along with artificial intelligence, is one of the 3 high-growth or lighthouse industry sectors on which we'll be focusing in the coming years. The others are the life sciences, with a particular focus on computational biology, and aerospace and aviation, with a focus on position, navigation, and timing. The Capital of Quantum investment also includes $10 million in capital funds to support the construction of a new headquarters for IonQ, a University of Maryland spinoff, and the first publicly traded quantum company. They are a global leader in quantum, and we need to make sure, again, that they stay right here in Maryland. The second item that I want to mention is $25 million to capitalize the existing Sunny Day Fund, which we would like to see become a tool for business attraction, not just business retention and expansion. In separate legislation, we are proposing renaming and reconfiguring the program into the Strategic Closing Fund, but in this budget, we are requesting the funds. I'd like to turn now to the DLS recommendations, again, for which we are grateful. We have included our full written testimony responses in that testimony, and the Department of Commerce does concur with recommendation number 6, swapping general funds to special funds excuse me, for the RISE Zone Rental Assistance Program. We also concur with recommendation number 7, swapping general funds to special funds for the Maryland New Start Microloan Program. And we concur with recommendation number 11, making $10 million of the Sunny Day Fund, Sunny Day appropriation contingent on the enactment of legislation establishing the Strategic Closing Fund at the Department of Commerce. And we have provided the requested updates on the number of vacancies in the department, our winning the decade report on the implementation of chapters 68 and 69, and on the proposal through the Governor's Decade Act to revamp the RISE Zones program and to move it to MEDCO. You can find our responses in the written testimony, and we will be happy to provide you with the link to the Winning the Decade report. But we respectfully disagree with several of the DLS recommendations, and I would like to address a few of those points. I'll begin by saying that while we absolutely respect the seriousness of the fiscal challenge that Maryland is facing, and we share the desire of DLS to address these challenges, now is not the time to constrain investment in Maryland's economic growth. Briefly, and again respectfully, we disagree with recommendation number 1, proposing a reduction in funding for travel expenses in the Office of Business and Industry Sector Development. This funding is necessary to support the governor's international trade missions in the coming fiscal year, And while travel costs have increased across the board since the COVID-19 pandemic, our travel budgets have remained flat or even decreased. We also disagree with recommendation number 2, deleting proposed grant funding to Ignite Capital. This is an important opportunity to spur economic growth and foster redevelopment in historically disinvested communities in Baltimore City. We also disagree with recommendation number 3, reducing funding for the Maryland Manufacturing 4.0 grant program. The mandated funding level of $1 million is simply not sufficient to meet the demand for this program, which has received far more applications than it could fund in the 2025 program year and saw a return of more than double the state's investment. We disagree with recommendation number 4, reducing the funding for the BioHub Maryland initiative. The biomanufacturing sector is rapidly expanding, but there is a significant skills gap in Maryland's existing workforce. Not only will the full $2 million proposed help address that gap, it is far less than our competitor states are investing in similar programs. Specifically, this is an area where we can clearly see that we are being outperformed by our peers who are willing to invest more in biotechnology training. We respectfully disagree with recommendation number 5, reducing the allowance for the Build Our Future grant program. Funding was shifted from this program to our Manufacturing 4.0 program in fiscal 2025, yet there was significant interest in the Build Our Future program with 90 applications and a potential total spend of over $355 million. The intent was to return this program to its full $10 million appropriation in fiscal 2026, and a reduction in available funding will mean important projects in target industries do not happen and that Maryland does not benefit from the resulting investment. Excuse me. Commerce also disagrees with recommendation number 8 to reduce funding for the Tourism Development Board, which will have immediate and long-term economic consequences. Specifically, this will leave only $3.5 million for the Office of Tourism Development to market, sell, and develop the state as a competitive travel destination, far less than our peer and competitor states. There will also be a ripple effect as reduced visitation leads to economic downturn and employment in areas that heavily depend on tourist dollars. We respectfully disagree with recommendation number 10, suggesting a possible reduction of funding for the Maryland State Arts Council. This would negatively impact Maryland's artists and arts community, as well as Commerce's business and attraction efforts. We disagree with recommendation number 12, reducing proposed funding for the Sunny Day Fund, which the administration wishes to reconfigure as a strategic closing fund. The full $25 million is a critical component to communicating the state's commitment to attracting new businesses and, more importantly, enabling the program to address business attraction opportunities quickly so that the state does not miss out on them. Lastly, Commerce also respectfully disagrees with the recommendation to limit the total value of the Maryland Film Production Activity Tax Credit in the BRFA. As we explained, this program can be made much more effective by removing the per production cap for this credit and ensuring that the program is consistently funded. This BRFA proposal would significantly undermine the state's ability to attract productions and further damage an industry that has been struggling over the past 2 years, first due to the labor strikes and then due to the Los Angeles wildfires. These funding proposals for tourism, film and the arts, for capitalizing the Sunny Day Fund, for manufacturing and workforce development and other initiatives are investments in Maryland's growth, and they will pay off in the coming years. Economic growth is a long-term structural solution to the challenges that we are facing today. Fully funding these economic development tools is the best path for the state. In closing, I'll note that we are not looking for a patchwork or Band-Aid solution to the temporary budget shortfall. We are looking to realign and refocus Maryland's economic development strategy and toolbox so that we can position the state for sustained, meaningful economic growth. Growth that brings jobs, high wages, and excellent quality of life for Marylanders across the state. But we cannot do this alone. As Governor Moore also likes to say, partnership produces progress and nothing else does. So we are asking for your partnership. We are asking for your support. We can win the decade, but only if we work together. We respectfully request that you approve Commerce's fiscal 2026 budget as submitted. Thank you, and we are ready to answer your questions.
And thank you so much, Acting Secretary. We appreciate your remarks. Any questions from the committee? Delegate Forbes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Acting Secretary Coker. Welcome to Appropriations. It's nice to have you in the state of Maryland and working for our businesses and commerce. I think Ms. Lahat will be able to answer this question for me. Can you please talk about the accelerator program for nonprofits and the work you've been doing with them? It isn't in our budget today because it's not a cut, because it was only funded for 3 years and there's no funding after June. But can you talk about how many nonprofits were using it and what kind of services they were getting? And can you talk about who might be available to help them if this program ends?
I have information from Maryland nonprofits on the accelerator program, yes. So the background information on that is the accelerator program is run by Maryland nonprofits on the department's behalf. We do have the Nonprofit Development Center within the Department of Commerce. We have contracted with Maryland nonprofits to run that on our behalf. And there was money in the budget, it was a few years ago now, I can't remember exactly what year, 2023, there we go, thank you, Elizabeth, to fund the nonprofit accelerator, really helping them with like back office support, things like that, to combine resources so that those nonprofits don't individually have to spend those time and efforts on it. There is not money in the FY26 budget allowance for the accelerator, as the delegate noted, and so there's no recommended cuts or anything, there's no recommended funding for it. But according to Maryland nonprofits, they have served 289 organizations through those efforts since it was funded, in FY23. And it looks like they've done a variety of different services through that. They've split them into different cohorts, but yeah, I'm happy to provide to the committee as well, the full committee and the subcommittee, the background information on the accelerator that was provided by Maryland nonprofits, if you're interested in some more information on that as well.
Well, I appreciate what you've shared. Thank you. And just the information about what percentage of our sector are nonprofits, like in our business sector, do you know that?
I do not know that.
And I know they do a lot of valuable work that take stuff off the plate of the state because they're doing work that we don't have to do because they're doing it. So thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Woolley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wonderful to see you, Mr. Secretary. Appreciate your testimony as well. I wanted to refer to page 6 of the DLS report, within which the overview of the agency spending, specifically looking at the business development piece, which is about 27% of the effort or monies really where the agency is spending. And you spoke to how our economy isn't where it needs to be. I think we can all agree that it's stagnant, it's not growing, not as our peers or neighboring states. And I wonder, as you're coming into this organization, sort of what does success look like? How are you thinking about measuring that? Because oftentimes we revert to outputs, right? We had these many applications for financial assistance, or we had these many people interested in tax credits. And while those things are really fantastic, I am very interested in knowing, what are the targets that you're looking to, especially when it comes to new business, because we need revenue in the state, we need a vibrant economy, and I don't really know what that business development success means to us as a state. So if you could speak to that, I'd really appreciate it.
I really appreciate the question, especially when you talk about output. I always distinguish output from outcomes. It's outcomes that most matter. Output is often necessary, but it's outcome that we aim for. In terms of the metric for success for the Department of Commerce, and frankly what I was told the metric for success for the acting secretary is the number of jobs that are retained and created, the number of businesses that are retained, expanded, and successfully recruited, and the amount of capital that is invested within Maryland from a number of sources. Could be VC or PE community, could be an area that we're going to place a lot more emphasis on, foreign direct investment as well. So those are the outcomes that our success will be measured by.
Appreciate it. Mr. Chair, may I have a follow-up? So that sounds fantastic, those three categories. And so are you, I imagine that the targets for each of them are going to be set at some, so how many businesses are we hoping to retain and, recruit and in a year, in a couple of years, sort of what does all of that, what do the milestones look like? If you can speak to that.
Yes. What I can tell you is I was also asked that question during the interview process, and my answer was there'll be more jobs. But what we intend to do, the Winning the Decade report was released today. That report is the foundation for our economic development strategy, and we'll analyze that report further, and the strategy will have specific targets, objectives, goals that we have to meet in each of those categories that I mentioned. But we have to give that more analysis before I throw out a number. But that is something that we will do, and we'll be transparent about that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Appreciate that. So I just want to follow up on some of those questions. One of the questions about what does success look like, and I was reading your report here and your testimony. One of the things that caught my attention is one of the bills that I actually put in last year for the Maryland Aerospace and Technology Commission, and ensuring that not only that we keep what we already have for our Maryland aerospace companies, but how can we expand them and not lose them from the state of Maryland? Because I think we're currently right now probably about $1 billion in revenue from aerospace. And so I know I'm not looking for you to answer the question now, because obviously we just put the commission together, but I'm just interested in how we can just make it a more vibrant IT area, being that we are in the DMV, being that Virginia does a pretty good job in having these IT companies, but we do have a lot of great folks who are thriving in that arena here in the state of Maryland. So how can we thrive, not only just in the aerospace, not just in quantum, but how can we even do more in that IT AI world in the state? We see every single day where companies like Apple and them are looking to invest more money into different states to grow their AI footprint. I think they was looking at $500 billion to invest. And I saw a couple of states that they talked about investing in. Maryland was not one of them, but how can we make that a place where companies like that want to come and grow?
Yes, sir. A few things that we will be doing. Number one, my remarks included multiple references to our peer and competitor states. We're going to take a look at best practices from those peer competitor states that are outperforming us. What are they doing that we should consider doing? So we'll have lessons learned, if you will, and we'll consider what might or might not fit for our state. We'll also reach out to the business community and and hopefully have forthright conversations with them about the business environment in Maryland and how we can make that more attractive, not just for the current businesses, which are very important, but also potential new businesses. You mentioned the technology. We also want to put an increased focus on technology transfer. We have a number of world-class federal facilities here in the state. We have a number of world-class colleges and universities here in the state. We want to encourage technology transfer. I've personally been aware of technology transfer from some of our intelligence community components. Those researchers have been encouraged to lawfully and ethically transfer some of that technology. And we want to make sure they're all aware of that and then encourage it and support it however we can. Likewise with the colleges and universities. Very, very bright students, staff, and faculty. We want to help those technologists who are at the top of their peer group in technology, but who may be lacking the business acumen, the entrepreneurial perspective to transfer that technology. We want to help them out so that we can go from the lab, if you will, to the marketplace. So we want to help that. And you also mentioned reading about companies looking to invest. We want to get ahead of that, sir. I've read about some opportunities as well. We want to be in constant dialogue with what we've called lighthouse sectors so that we're a part of their thinking as opposed to reaching out after it's already in the press. So that goes back to partnership. We're not going to get everything we pursue, but we want to know about everything that's available. And that's being of a salesperson mindset as opposed to sitting back and waiting. We want to lead on that.
We appreciate that. Any other questions for this panel? Awesome, appreciate that. Thank you so much. We do got a couple of witnesses after you all, but thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. As we transition in and out from this panel here, I'm calling up David Spear, Jody, Matt Leiber, Miss Sarah again, appreciate that, and we go from left to right. And each got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Matt Lieber. My day job is the Executive Director of the Maryland Soccerplex, but I'm here to represent the Maryland Tourism Coalition. We represent the tourism industry for the state of Maryland. We are here to say not only should you not cut the budget for the Maryland Tourism Development Board, at this point in time, you should actually look at increasing it. We are not an expense line to the state. We are an investment line. The Secretary mentioned this, that we are currently being outpaced by our neighbors. So I'm going to give you some numbers. Washington, D.C. spends $45 million a year on tourism marketing. Pennsylvania, $31.36 million. Virginia, $24.5. West Virginia, $33.76. We're spending 15, and we're talking about cutting that in half. We're going to lose visitors to the state, and that is a lifeblood for a lot of the state, from Ocean City to the ski resorts in Western Maryland. We hit every sector of the industry. We hit food and beverage, lodging, transportation, recreation, entertainment, retail. We're important to the state across the board for this economy. We had 45.1 million visitors in 2023. They spent $20.5 billion in direct spending. That was $31.4 billion in total economic impact. That was $2.4 billion in state and local taxes that were raised. That saved Maryland taxpayers $1,027. We're important to the state. We shouldn't be looking at cutting this funding. We should be looking at reinvesting into tourism because it's so important. Again, the Secretary said this before, we're the door to the state. We're the front door that says, this is why you should move here. This is why you should bring your business here. It shows what our values are as a state. So it's important that we're continuing to invest in tourism and making sure that our industry is vibrant because we're so important to the rest of the state. So thank you for this, and I hope we don't cut the funding to the Tourism Development Board.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the subcommittee. My name is David Spear, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Israel Development Center, or the MIDC, and I'm here in support of the Department of Commerce budget. The MIDC remains incredibly grateful for our grant from the Maryland Department of Commerce. Founded 33 years ago, the MIDC is a nonprofit organization that promotes bilateral trade with a focus on imports and exports, as well as helping Israeli companies open their U.S. headquarters in Maryland or foreign direct investment. The MIDC does not give funds directly to Israeli companies, nor do we charge any fees for our services. We work closely with the Department of Commerce and our partners in Israel and right here in Maryland to attract and retain innovative Israeli companies. Over the years, the return on investment includes these companies contributing hundreds of millions of dollars directly to Marylanders in the form of job creation and economic growth. While there are a few Israeli defense companies in Maryland, most of their operations here are creating radar systems for the Iron Dome in Israel, which is a purely defensive system that saves innocent lives regardless of religion or anything else. Most of our companies, however, are in the life sciences or med tech sectors. One such company created an app for visually impaired and blind people to be able to navigate public spaces more easily with the focus on inclusivity. Other companies are using AI at the genomic level to tailor medical decision-making, or using shockwave technology to treat kidney stones. Finally, we are also working with a minority-owned, Baltimore-based company on a life-saving product for wound and burn care. This company is FDA approved, and we are helping them export to Israel. All these companies continue to make the world a better place and grow the local economy right here in Maryland. And I ask for a favorable report for the Commerce budget as introduced by the Governor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the subcommittee. I'm Sarah Mirsky-Mickey. I'm the Deputy Director of the Baltimore Jewish Council, which represents the Associated Jewish Community Federation of Baltimore, all its agencies, including the Maryland Israel Development Center. I'm here in support of the department's $300,000 allocation for MIDC. Maryland has over a dozen trade partnerships funded with countries including, at least from 2020, the UAE, Brazil, Australia, China, and Colombia. These are aimed at creating business opportunities in Maryland. However, unlike I believe all these other partnerships, funding for MIDC goes directly to a Maryland organization which employs Marylanders. The MIDC partnership is one of the most successful trade partnerships in Maryland, now having over 40 businesses, which is up from around 20 businesses when I started 10 years ago, and employing hundreds of Marylanders and generating millions upon millions of dollars for the state of Maryland. I want to thank Commerce for their continued partnership over the past 30 years, and I would be happy to answer any questions. I ask for a favorable report of this part of the budget as introduced. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and the committee. My name is Jody Venkatesan, President of Platinum Business Service. I'm a small business owner in the state of Maryland. And what I'd like to ask you is recommend full funding for the Veteran Institute for Procurement of the Montgomery Chamber of Commerce. Everything the acting secretary said is what has been happening in a positive way with our company. And I mean that from an example of cybersecurity, machine learning, artificial intelligence, everything you were asking for happened with our company. And it happened because of that veteran program. It is, in which I participated in many, many years ago. It's a roadmap for success, and everything works. I assure you that it works. I started off literally with $1,000 in Laurel Bank of America, my deposit. Today we're about 15 million, 100 employees operating, with all kinds of federal work. And when you look at really what the economic numbers of, the multiplier effect of 9 usually is, I don't think that's my bell, but I'll keep going, is really about a 9 multiplier with the Maryland economy, right here in the heart, of Maryland. I think it's very valuable. I would say this as well. We've partnered with the historically black colleges and universities. It's been a very successful partnership in terms of technology integration and the support of that. But what I'll tell you is the veteran businesses get it done, and this program works. And these folks have worked tirelessly and really put that money to real business for Maryland. Last year alone, prime contracts over the life of $7.9 billion, and it was $1.74 billion in prime contracts awarded for those veteran-owned businesses with that program. I don't see how any other dollar could go any further than that. And I really do mean that sincerely. What I'll also say is that in terms of that roadmap, what it does, it makes those companies acquisition ready to support and sustain federal work properly and other work. That's all I got. So yeah, stop. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Any question? All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Our next panel, we got Jonathan, Liz, Amanda, Nicholas. We go from left to right. Appreciate you.
Thank you, committee. My name is Liz Cabrera-Holtz, and I'm a District 15 constituent. I'm here to ask the committee to end Maryland's grant to the Maryland Israel Development Center. For the past year and a half, I, like the rest of the world, have watched Israel commit atrocities against the Palestinian people, including burning children alive, bombing hospitals, and detaining and torturing Palestinian doctors and nurses. You don't need to be an expert to understand that a genocide is being perpetrated against Palestinians because their deaths are being live streamed to our phones. Just today, I watched a man carry an unconscious toddler whose face was severely burned and head was bleeding down the street because there was no ambulance to carry him. Maryland has an opportunity to stand against these atrocities by ending the state's grant to the MIDC. As the previous speaker stated, the MIDC does invest in Israeli defense companies that build weapons that are killing Palestinians as I speak. Our state budget is a moral document, and as a parent of 3 young children and a lifelong Maryland resident, I ask you to stop funding them and instead support education, housing, and climate resilience. There's no financial benefit we can gain from this grant that could outweigh involving Maryland residents and its taxpayers in these atrocities. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Rockhind. I'm a resident of Baltimore City, and I'm here testifying on behalf of Jewish Voice for Peace Action, which is a national Jewish organization in support of Palestinian rights. Our sister organization, Jewish Voice for Peace, has over 10,000 supporters in Maryland and chapters in Baltimore City, the D.C. metro area, and at the University of Maryland, College Park. So we are also requesting amendment of the budget to remove public funding for the Maryland Israel Development Center. We think Marylanders do not want to support Israel's militarized economy. Around a third of the Israeli businesses aided by MIDC are in the weapons and security industries. At least 2, Rafael and Elta, are owned by the Israeli government itself for military purposes. These are businesses that support and profit from the surveillance, control, and murder of Palestinians and make Israel's genocidal violence possible. One supported country, Mistral Security, sells a crowd control spray developed for the Israeli military, which has in the past been marketed to U.S. law enforcement for use at, quote, border crossings, correctional facilities, demonstrations, and sit-ins. Marylanders do not want to subsidize the import of these technologies to the USA. We're not opposed to international aid or cooperation or trade or economic development, but the subsidy for MIDC singles out one country, Israel. Singling out Israeli businesses for financial investment and support is controversial within the Maryland Jewish community. The Maryland Jewish community is increasingly divided over support for Israel. Around half of all U.S. Jews think Israel's military response is indefensible and support withholding some aid to Israel. We think Jews are instead safest when we unite with all who are threatened to collectively fight hate and oppression and to create societies where everyone is safe and free. Jewish safety is not found in singling out Israel as the exception to international and U.S. law or by supporting Israel as it engages in horrific violence against Palestinians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair and honorable members of this committee, my name is Amanda Morell, and I'm the Deputy Director for Maryland Citizens for the Arts. We are a nonprofit that advocates for statewide public investment of the arts. Through our advocacy, we represent the interest of over 300 arts organizations, 24 local arts councils, 29 arts and entertainment districts, and thousands of artists across Maryland. It is an honor to work in a state that values and celebrates the arts sector's ability to attract and retain residents and businesses that contribute to so much of Maryland's high quality of life. I want to thank the governor and his administration and the Maryland General Assembly for their continued support and the belief that in the incredible importance of a vibrant arts sector here in Maryland. Impressively, each year, MSAC provides grants to thousands of individual artists and arts organizations and has helped Maryland become a national model for equitable investment in the arts. Much of this investment is due to bipartisan lawmaking from the Maryland General Assembly and the passing of a 30-year funding formula called the 1994 Arts Stabilization Act. Today, I am providing a voice for our arts constituents and would like to ask that the committee continue the trend of strong state investment in the arts. To that end, we respectfully ask the committee to fully fund the State Arts Council at the mandated FY26 arts appropriation, and respectfully request that the committee reject the proposed elimination of the mandated funding formula for the Maryland State Arts Council Fund in the BRFA. The Maryland State Arts Council ensures that this appropriation reaches every corner of the state, and more importantly, it is distributed equitably through a rigorous and transparent granting process with an eye towards diversity and accountability. As you will hear from my colleagues in this room, this investment is a crucial piece of state support for the continued vibrancy of the arts here in Maryland. I thank this committee for its time and continued support for the arts sector.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your testimony. Any questions? Thank you for your time. Appreciate you. Next we have, once again, is that Nicholas here? Nicholas Cohan? Okay. I think you might have put your name by mistake, but that's okay. Jose? And Jose Rodriguez? Keisha Mason? Nadia? Ooh, we got one. Oh, it might have been for tomorrow. Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. Say that again? Yeah, so what's her name? Gloria. Come on up, Gloria. We'll start from left and go to the right. Appreciate you.
Operations. We're able to support many partners who present programs at the park, including 13 resident performing and visual arts groups and 15 social dance presenters, not to mention countless musicians, instructors, and artists whom we engage through our programs. Our grant is used to provide free programs to the public, such as our annual Carousel Day, and also to provide services like marketing, facilities support, and maintain the historic structures like the Spanish Ballroom and the Denzel Carousel, which received the Maryland Heritage Award a few years ago. We are requesting that you support the governor's recommended level of funding for MSAC and that you protect the formula that has functioned so effectively and enabled the arts community to remain strong. Your support of these two items can ensure a vibrant and flourishing arts program to benefit the entire state. Thank you.
Members of the Subcommittee on Education and Economic Development, my name is Nadia Carroll. I'm a District 18 constituent, homeowner and taxpayer for over 32 years in Bethesda. I'm here to request that the Appropriations Committee end Maryland's annual grant to the Maryland Israel Development Center, the MIDC. For one thing, the funding the MIC is not fiscally responsible on our part. The federal government, under the auspices of the U.S.-Israeli Scientific and Business Cooperation, already provides matchmaking services between Israeli and American companies, providing funding for Israeli tech, cyber, homeland security, and energy businesses through the Byrd Foundation, BSF Foundation, and BARD. Just to cite two, Byrd Cyber received $6 million in fiscal year 23, Byrd Homeland Security, $15 million. We don't have a Maryland-Norway or Maryland-Japan Development Center. Businesses from other countries are served by the existing Maryland Economic Development Office, which Israeli companies could also be served by the existing agencies. We know that there is new evidence that Maryland has been directly implicated in a war crime. In October, Israel dropped a 2-ton bomb onto a 10-story residential apartment complex in Beirut, and photos showed that it was a U.S.-made bomb with a SPICE guidance system, which is built by Rafael. The MIDC brought Rafael to Bethesda specifically to help them broker these types of partnerships. Meanwhile, families in Maryland are being told that there will be no funds for low-intensity support services for the developmentally disabled. The trust fund for 988 is not fully funded, and there are not enough psychiatric beds across the state. Yet companies who help dismember children in Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine are getting our tax dollars. I have personal experience with the lack of services for our developmentally disabled population and the serious lack of emergency psychiatric hospital beds across the state. I could never obtain LIS funding because it is always underfunded, and more families miss out on services than those who get them. I once spent 12 hours in an emergency room waiting with my child for a needed psychiatric bed, and before one became available, I had to leave her alone in order to go to a different hospital to get my scheduled cancer radiation treatment. Every one of my District 18 team emphasized that the budget is a moral document. I feel that Marylanders cherish, we don't want to fund the MIDC, which entails taking funds from services for Marylanders that they need and would make them more productive to our state, is not the value that I think most Marylanders share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Gloria Fajimolu, and I serve as the Director of Operations, Communications, and Events for the Baltimore County Arts Guild. We proudly manage the Catonsville Arts and Entertainment District. It's the only designated arts and entertainment district in Baltimore County. The support we receive from MSAC is vital to our work. Their grants for organizations funding has covered the majority of my salary, allowing us to maintain the operational stability needed to bring impactful arts programming to our community. MSAC is a cornerstone of Maryland's thriving arts ecosystem, providing grants to over 300 arts organizations and hundreds of artists statewide. The arts contribute significantly to our economy, generating $13 billion in economic activity and $7.3 billion in arts worker compensation. Beyond economics, the arts enhances education, offering students opportunities to engage in cultural and creative programs that nurture innovation, critical thinking, and community connection. The state's contribution to arts organizations is modest. It's just 6% of total revenue, but the impact is tremendous. Arts organizations leverage this support with private donations, ticket sales, and other earned income, demonstrating an exceptional public-private partnership model. I respectfully urge you to fully fund the MSAC and reject the proposed elimination of the 30-year funding formula in the governor's BRFA. Continued investment in the arts is a cultural priority and an economic and educational imperative for Maryland's future. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you to this panel. We appreciate you. Our last panel, Susie. Last name Dede and Elizabeth Perry. Start from our left, going to our right.
Dear Vice Chair Harris and the members of the committee, I'm Ayşe Dede, and I am a constituent from the District 37B. And I'm here today to express my deep concern over Maryland's financial and political support for the Maryland Israel Development Center, MIDC, an entity that facilitates the entry of Israeli companies, many of which are weapons manufacturers, into our state. Alarmingly, some of these companies include the Israeli military itself, such as Alta North America and Rafael. By providing these entities with taxpayer-funded grants and special privileges, Maryland is directly supporting an industry that profits from war and destruction. Maryland taxpayers should not be forced to subsidize a regime in one way or the other that is committing atrocities against infants, patients, medical workers, civilians, journalists, and aid workers. This is especially egregious given our own state's substantial budget deficit. Public funds should be directed toward improving the lives of Maryland residents and not perpetuating cycles of violence abroad, nor encouraging associated entities to come to the state of Maryland. If the counter-argument is that the initiatives through MIDC generate millions of dollars for the state of Maryland, then I urge you to consider this. The special treatment afforded to Israel through MIDC raises a fundamental question Why single out Israel for such privileges, especially when its government is engaged in well-documented human rights violations? Why not explore the ways to direct these resources toward investments with nations that are not associated with war crimes, war profiteering, and systemic oppression? Maryland must ensure that no public funds support institutions or entities tied to Israel's military-industrial complex, including the MIDC. The state of Maryland and all of its agencies and counties should immediately end all grants and privileges provided to the MIDC and instead demonstrate a commitment to justice, human dignity, and equality. Otherwise, there will come a time when these decisions will be remembered with shame and disgust. I strongly urge this committee to reevaluate Maryland's economic partnerships and pursue foreign investments from ethical and sustainable sources. The people of this state deserve better than to see their tax dollars used to fuel war and oppression. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Vice Chair Harris and subcommittee members. My name is Susan Karen, and I represent Peace Action Montgomery. We have over 1,500 members. I'm also requesting that you end Maryland's annual grant to the Maryland Israel Development Center. It's important to note that Marylanders pay $28 billion in our federal taxes to fund Israel's military complex. And it's bringing in Raphael and Elta, which are the Israeli government, we're creating artificial demand. So Israel is going in demanding of the Pentagon weapons, military aid weapons. At the same time, Israel, masked as Raphael and Elta, are saying we supply the weapons. It's called artificial demand, and it's a way to sort of build this wicked cycle. Like many Marylanders, I have been distressed these past 15 months watching the indiscriminate killing of children, including by starvation and being frozen to death. I have seen kids made into orphans, and I've seen kids missing limbs. And while the bombing in Gaza may have stopped, the terror still continues. In Jenin, which is on the West Bank side, Israel's military has driven out nearly 90% of the population out of their homes, and this is just over this past month. This is not making a better world. I don't believe the fact that the MIDC brings in other companies cancels out the fact that they're bringing in actors engaged in genocide and occupation. I also don't think the MIDC has a monopoly on companies that support life services. There is nothing vital about the MIDC. It is an unnecessary giveaway to companies colluding in war crimes. At what point do we invest in our values rather than this ethical liability? Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Perry, and I'm a resident of District 20. I'm in front of this body for the first time in my 20 years of residence because I am deeply opposed to the grant given to the Maryland Israel Development Center. I've only just learned our tax money is bringing in these apartheid Israel weapons manufacturers to our state. I've been late to learning about Zionists and the decades of ethnic cleansing they are enacting. Maybe you have as well. Maybe you've been watching and learning for the first time with so many of us for 16 months and have been living with the sick horror in the pit of your stomach. Maybe you too are appalled to learn we, as US citizens, are responsible for funding the torture and brutal murders of Palestinians. I'm not here to educate you on the MIDC. That's your job, and I expect you know about it. I'm here to remind you of the sick feeling you had watching videos of tiny babies left to die alone when IDF terrorists forced at gunpoint the healthcare workers to abandon them. I'm here because any ounce of compassion or care in your body requires you to listen to your fellow residents when we say, stop using our taxes to make us complicit.
Any questions? All right, that concludes this panel, and that actually concludes our budget hearing.
I did sign up. I just signed up late, but it was in time for the deadline, so if possible, I'd like to also share.
What's your name?
Zayda Chaudhry, C-H-A-U-D-R-Y is the last name. We just had 4 bills today, so but we did sign up. I have confirmation.
Don't have it, but I'll bring you up. You got 2 minutes.
the end of the day, and you've heard quite a bit, so I won't waste your time, but I do appreciate you taking the opportunity to hear from us on this very, very important issue. Obviously, at this time, our state is facing a massive budget shortfall, and you have the opportunity to be able to make sure that funding within our state is allocated in a judicious way. My name is Zainab Chaudhry. I'm the director for CARE's office in Maryland. CARE is a Council on American Islamic Relations. We are the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. And over the course of the last several months, we have heard from thousands and thousands of our community members who have reached out to us asking us to take action on this issue. You have heard many testimonies before myself, and I'm sure you've received the emails explaining to you what the objections are to funding for the MIDC. But our position is that not just for MIDC, but any organization or any entity that upholds the interests of a foreign government that is complicit in war crimes against humanity, that is under investigation by the International Criminal Court, should not be an organization or entity that receives our tax dollars to help support their work. As part of the IMAN network, which is the Islamic Maryland Action Network, which includes over 35 Maryland mosques and Muslim community organizations, our organization joins these residents who have sent over 36,000 letters in recent weeks to state leaders, urging them to permanently terminate funding for MIDC and any group or entity, as I mentioned, that supports the interests of foreign countries that have been found to violate international law. I'm going to just end with this quote from the Secretary General of Amnesty International. Her name is Agnes Callamard. She said, Amnesty International's report on the genocide in Gaza by the Israeli occupation forces demonstrates that Israel has carried out acts prohibited under the Genocide Convention with the specific intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza. These acts include killings, causing serious bodily or mental harm, and deliberately inflicting on Palestinians in Gaza conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction. And in interest of time, I will stop my quote there, but in the testimony before you, you have the full quote that she mentioned, and I encourage you to also read that report. It is eye-opening, it is chilling, it is frightening, it is terrifying, and our tax dollars should not, in any case, ever be allocated towards any entity that is complicit or engaged in war crimes against humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Appreciate that. That concludes our budget hearing for Department of Commerce, and that concludes our budget hearing for today. Appreciate you. Have a great day.